So once again, we're finding that our president is a foreign asset. And you've heard my opinion of this before. I don't think it's so much that Donald Trump cut a deal with the government of Russia or anything like that. I think that for 20 years, he's been laundering money for Russian oligarchs and Turkish oligarchs and Armenian oligarchs and, probably South Korean oligarchs, places where he's got Trump towers all over the world, Filipino oligarchs. I mean, this is the Panama Papers all over again. These guys, they stash their money in the United States typically by buying real estate because, the Trump Organization was one of the few real estate companies in the United States and certainly in New York that was willing to take cash payments. They take, $40, $50 million in $100 bills. And this is what Trump has been doing all these years. And that's why he won't let his taxes out and all that kind of stuff. Now, you don't hear about that so much on the corporate media, although they are starting to acknowledge it with this thing about the intelligence briefing. But you have been hearing about that for 3 years now, right here on Free Speech TV. I mean, Free Speech TV is where the actual news gets laid out, whether it's Amy Goodman or me or Sonali or Stephanie Miller or David Pakman. I mean, there's just some great talent on Free Speech TV. And, when you make your contribution during a particular show, it not only goes to Free Speech TV, but a very small portion of that actually comes to the show, comes to us to help us deliver our show to Free Speech TV, to pay for our internet connection and to help pay for some of our video production here on this end. And it's all real important. It helps us, it helps and every other show on Free Speech TV, and it helps Free Speech TV. So this is sort of your vote, for the shows that you like. And it's really important that you call now, 877-378-8669, and make your contribution to Free Speech TV. Every little bit helps. The ongoing contributions, becoming a sustaining member during our show, is, super important because that allows Free Speech TV to know in advance what kind of money they're going to have coming in, to budget, to plan for the future. And so please call now, 877-378-8669, so that we can keep talking about what's actually going on in the world, what's actually going on inside the Trump administration, what's actually going on inside the Democratic Party, for that matter. There's just a whole lot of stuff, a whole lot of stories. I know we put, Louise and I put this, and Sean and Nate, we put this show together every day, and we put a lot of work into it. And with Nigel and Sue and everybody else involved in this, and all of that work comes together as this program, and we really try to do it, try to put together a show so that you're fully informed, so that you can go into the day and say, okay, I really do know what the top news stories of the day are, and even the subtleties of them, the things like the economy, our conversations with Richard Wolff, and voting, our conversations with Greg Palast, and the work and research that I do, frankly, that in writing my books on the guns and on the Supreme Court and on voting, and then bringing all that information to this show. We love doing it. I enjoy doing it. And, and we want to continue doing it. We want to continue doing it here on Free Speech TV. And that's only going to happen if enough of you call now and make a contribution, 877-378-8669. With a $20 gift, there's a Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker. Or with a $20 gift, you can get it's sort of like a bumper sticker, the car magnet that says, "I'm voting, are you?" I'm sorry, that's the postcard pack. The car magnet, what does a car magnet look like here, Nate?
It says, "I'm voting, are you?"
It says, "I'm voting, are you?" Cool, thank you. And with a $50 gift, there's the Just Effing Vote canvas tote bag. This is great, right? And I heard yesterday from the folks at Free Speech TV that a lot of people love the tote bag. And, you can make a $50 gift and get the tote bag, and then you can say, oh, and by the way, also, take $5 a month, on my credit card forever, or $10 a month, or whatever it may be. With a $75 donation, you get the Tag Your It Thom Hartmann Program mug. And with a $240 contribution, You can participate in one of our virtual meet and greets where we all get together on Skype or Zoom or something like that, where and just have a kind of private, off-the-record conversation. So that's with $240. With a $300 gift, you get the Get Out the Vote pack. There's a set of Free Speech TV host postcards to send out to friends and family. Mine says, "I'm voting, are you?" A car magnet, the Get Out the Vote, the Just Effing Vote tote bag, and the Hidden History of the War on Voting, my new book. That's with a $300 gift. With a $360 gift, you get all three of my Hidden History books: the Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment, the Hidden History of the War on Voting, and the Hidden History of the Supreme Court, the Betrayal of America. And with a $1,000 gift, come to Portland and hang out here in the peanut gallery, in the couch in our studio for the last hour of the show, and we'll take you to lunch afterwards, and you'll get to meet everybody. It'll be great. So please call now. Thank you so much. Things are making, and that tells us as much as the headlines themselves. Notes on a Nervous Planet by Matt Haig.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Hey, happy Friday, TGIF, Shabbat Shalom, Juma Mubarak, whatever it may be for you. It's a great day for me. I'm back home. I'm in my own studio. I'm hanging out here with Sean and Nate and Joyce, and we're having a good time. And it's a beautiful day in Portland. It was a beautiful day in Seattle yesterday, actually. Onward we roll. It's Anything Goes Friday, of course, but there are a couple things I want to share with you here before we just kind of get into whatever you want to talk about today. And I've got a few news stories, and we actually have a couple of guests. In the second hour, David Enrich is going to be with us. He is the finance editor at the New York Times, and he's written a new book called Dark Towers. And it's about Deutsche Bank and Donald Trump and laundering money for the Russians and all that kind of stuff. And it's going to be, I'm really looking forward to this conversation. I spent some time in the book this morning. In fact, we made it one of our book reports for the day, and that you can find on YouTube. And also in our third hour, we've got a science report about bears pooping in the woods in Alaska. No, it's not. And biodiversity and just some fascinating stuff about that whole spectrum of stuff. So those are going to happen in the program, but the rest of the show, it's Anything Goes Friday, and I've got some news stories for you. By the way, the press is reporting and reporting widely that the Bloomberg campaign, which is up to now $400 billion in spending, which is pretty shocking. I mean, $400 billion is a heck of a lot of money. And that the Bloomberg campaign has been paying influencers, people on Instagram and others, to say nice things about Bloomberg. It got even weirder right here on this show, we were on yesterday, we got several calls from people who were like, well, Bloomberg is okay, and well, Bernie is terrible or whatever. And every single one of them were calls from people who had never called the show before. Our call screen software keeps track. If you call in and Joyce puts your name in, you're John in Jeffersonville, Ohio. I see he's on the board right now. The next time John calls, it'll recognize his phone number, and she will just know who he is. And so we know when somebody's ever called before. Now, we don't share that information with anybody. It's just, in the database for the call screen software. Which makes it easier for us and for Joyce. Basically, that's it. And also, when somebody's a troll or a fool or whatever, we can flag them for future. But when somebody calls when you get a whole bunch of calls from people who have never called before, all on the same topic, that's kind of a flag that something's going on. And that's what happened yesterday with those Bloomberg calls. And then I got this email from Nigel Peacock. Nigel is the guy who, he basically runs a lot of our internet operations. I refer to him as our webmaster, but he's much more than that. And involved in the radio business himself as well, in the UK, which is where he lives. And Nigel's one of my oldest and dearest friends. I've known Nigel for, it seems like 20, 30 years at least. And so anyhow, he sent me this email yesterday. He says, you mentioned Bloomberg bots close to the end of the program in the YouTube chat. See, we simulcast, we live stream our show on YouTube and Facebook Live, as well as, everywhere else. And there's a chat room attached to our YouTube stream. And so he says, in YouTube chat, we have had a constant Bloomberg troll that posts the same things over and over. The moderator team lock them out all the time. And we are up to 70 separate lockouts now over the past few weeks. They simply open a new email and a new YouTube account and come back again. Today we locked out 8 different accounts in less than 90 minutes. They're clearly using the same artificial intelligence software as the porn bots we also suffer. And yeah, we get that too, as I imagine all chat rooms do. He says it's the identical way of posting, and clearly the porn software artificial intelligence. While we have no proof, it is clear that someone is being paid to troll for Bloomberg. So I noticed on Twitter that a couple of my colleagues, Leslie Marshall and let's see, who else was it? Let me just check the Twitter feed here. It was Leslie Marshall and maybe it was just Leslie. But in any case, a couple of my colleagues who do, progressive radio shows were basically being trolled themselves. And Nicole Sandler. And my advice, and hey, Leslie, hey, Nicole, they do great shows. If you don't know about these folks, check them out. And, the trolls are out. And now we're hearing from the media that a week ago yesterday, the Trump administration intelligence officials, this is this is through the office of the Director of National Intelligence, Joseph McGuire's office, that his assistant, his number 2, Shelby Pearson, did her job. She did exactly what the law requires. She has to, the Office of National Intelligence has to report periodically to the Intelligence Committee, and that's the committee chaired by Adam Schiff, and number 2 guy is Devin Nunes, has to go to that committee several times a year and update that committee on what is the situation with the United States national security. And you want that to happen. We all want that to happen, and that's a good thing, right? Well, the report said that the Russians are actually already trying to interfere in the 2020 election. Now, we don't know any of the details of how. We don't know if it's like, they're trying to hack into voting machines or voting tabulators or statewide systems, or whether it's interference with, as we saw in the last, in 2016, large structures of bots and whatnot and messages and things on Facebook and on Twitter, and social media, particularly Facebook. We just don't know exactly what they're talking about when they say Russian interference, but they said that this is happening. And Trump's response to this, and it was amazing. I saw Jim Sciutto, I believe it is, this morning, the White House reporter for CNN, was on TV, and he just came right out and said it. He said, the Russians helped Donald Trump get elected in 2016, and they're trying to do it again. That's not necessarily a verbatim quote, but it's the essence of what he said. It's been a while, we've known this now for 3 years. I've been talking about it on this show for 3 years. Donald Trump has been denying it. And now, by the way, the lawyers for Julian Assange, we reported this day before yesterday, the lawyers for Julian Assange had said in court in London, where you can go to jail if you lie in court, right, have said that Donald Trump offered through Dana Rohrabacher, who is, one of the members of the House of Representatives. He no longer is. He lost his last election, but and now he's a lobbyist or something. But who was, generally considered to be one of the more Russia-friendly members of the House of Representatives. And on its face, I suppose there's nothing wrong with that. We want to have good relations with other countries, including Russia. Just put that out. But that Dana Rohrabacher went over to the UK and had a private meeting with him with Julian Assange, in which he told him that if Julian Assange would publicly state that none of the information that WikiLeaks released that came from the DNC hack had come from or via Russia, that he could get Julian Assange a pardon from Donald Trump. And it turns out that Dana Rohrabacher now, this was last night, I believe, or maybe yesterday afternoon, came out and did an interview with a member of the media and actually said, yes, that's exactly what happened. And I had the conversation with John Kelly. He said he didn't actually talk to Trump about it, but he talked with the chief of staff, John Kelly, about it. And, there was never any follow-up, presumably because Julian Assange never made the statement. But, we don't have the smoking gun, but we do have the event. And so anyhow, the intelligence community says, yeah, Russia's trying to do this, and they're trying to do it in favor of Trump, just like 2016. So what does Trump do? He fires the director of national intelligence, Joseph Maguire. Says, that's it. This guy who's got all kinds of intelligence expertise, he's out. We're going to get rid of him, and we're going to replace him with a guy who has no experience with intelligence, none whatsoever, who's a right-wing basic hate monger, who's and who so offended the German government when he first was made ambassador to Germany. He's a big Trump donor and a big Trump guy that and is trying to replace him with this guy. But the Office of National Intelligence, the ONI, apparently is freaking out our senior intelligence officials because Trump doesn't want to hear this. And of course, the reason why, the obvious reason why, is that he feels that when you say that the Russians helped him get elected, it means he's not a legitimate president. And of course, he's not a legitimate president. He didn't win the popular vote. I don't think he actually even won the Electoral College. And the only reason that the numbers were what they were was because of voter suppression in those states. I just wrote a book about that, The Hidden History of the War on Voting. And you go to page 92 and it tells you, Hillary Clinton actually won Florida. She actually won North Carolina. She actually won Wisconsin. She actually won Pennsylvania. The exit polls are right there. It tells you this. But voter suppression handed those states to Donald Trump and made him president. And, which is frankly a crime. But Joseph Maguire and Shelby Pearson did their work. And so now Trump is putting in Kash Patel, this guy who has been working with Devin Nunes. Actually, when the briefing happened, when the intelligence community was briefed, Devin Nunes ran over to the White House to tell Trump about it and say, oh my God, Adam Schiff was in the room. And Trump was like, oh, the Democrats are going to weaponize that. Well, shouldn't you be doing something about this? And by the way, it appears that it's not just Russia. So who else is interfering in our elections? Is it Saudi Arabia? We know Trump is good buddies with, Mohammed bin Bonesaw. Do we have interference again? This was Seth Abramson's conclusion from his book, Proof of Conspiracy, that there are billionaires in Israel who are trying to, insert themselves into our election. Is it Turkey? Is it his buddy Erdogan? Or actually, he's Erdogan's buddy. Trump keeps doing what Erdogan tells you. Stab the Kurds in the back. Trump says, okay, cool. Now you've got 900,000 refugees in Syria. Literally. I mean, just think about that for a minute. These are families, mostly middle-class families. People like you and me, who suddenly had to flee their homes because they're being bombed with their children and all their possessions on the top of their cars. And they're going to these camps out in the desert while all because Trump took orders from Erdogan. I mean, this is crazy.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
We have a guy in the White House who, was a money launderer for these oligarchs in these countries and now is trying to cover it up. And welcome back. John in Jeffersonville, Ohio. Hey, John, what's up?
Yeah, I've been listening to you since Air America with Randy, Rachel Maddow, Mark, and Cenk Uygur and all that.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to thank you for a lot of the knowledge you've given me over the years has helped me win a lot of arguments, and in some cases has actually helped me to convince some people on the right to start reading and then waking up. And I really appreciate that.
You're welcome, John. I'm glad that that's worked for you. I mean, that's one of my main goals, is to help people win the water cooler wars. Learn how to share information with their friends.
Yeah, it absolutely has worked. Anyway, what I was calling today about was money and politics. Mm-hmm. We have so many groups and organizations that are championing left-wing ideas and stuff like that would be really, really great to accomplish. One thing that would be easier to accomplish in order to make all those things easy would be get money out of politics.
Yeah.
And the way I would like to illustrate would be, if you take a balloon and put your hand on it and push down on it, it's pretty hard to burst that balloon. But if you take a pen, you can just barely touch that balloon and it pops. That's the one thing that the left has, the right has that we don't have, is cohesiveness. They get an idea, and they don't give a rat's patootie about anything else. They all get behind that idea until they penetrate and get that through, and then they go to the next one. Right. And we need to learn that, and I think that would help us a lot.
I agree. It's like the Rachel Steinel, or whatever her name is, Kate Steinel thing in San Francisco, the woman who, an undocumented immigrant in the United States, dropped a gun somewhere in California, and the gun discharged and killed this woman, Kate Steinel. And if you talk to anybody who watches Fox News, they can repeat her name all day long. Murdered by a Hispanic who wasn't here legally, an illegal alien. Right. And they just pound on it. It's the way they pounded on Hillary's emails. It's the way they pounded on Benghazi, even though there was no there. In fact, arguably Benghazi happened because during the Bush administration, the State Department had asked for money to reinforce Benghazi, and the Bush administration turned it down. And Clinton gets blamed for this. I mean, it's just amazing. It's just amazing.
Right. Could I say one real quick thing that I'd like to say?
Sure.
Just quickly. Al Franken to head up the DNC.
Yeah, that would be a good idea. I'd say Al Franken to head up pretty much anything. I mean, he's a good guy. He's a smart guy. He knows his politics. He's now got a show on Sirius XM. I don't know if you knew.
Right.
On the weekends.
Yeah.
And Louise and I try to catch it, and I'm guessing it's probably out there as a podcast as well, because typically people do that. But anyway, it's a good thing. John, thank you. Thank you so much for your kind words.
And TOT, turn off Trump on TV. Turn off Trump, TOT.
Well, what we need to do is convince the networks to turn off Trump. I mean, I would like to see, if we're going to have to watch clips from every single one of Trump's rallies, which they always play, I'd like to see some clips from the rallies from Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, where actually more people are showing up and more thoughtful things are being said. And frankly, I think more important things are being said. John, thank you so much for the call. It's great to hear from you, and thanks for watching us on Free Speech TV there in Jeffersonville, Ohio. It's 22 minutes past the hour. We'll be back with more of your calls. I do want to talk a little bit about bullying here. I'm going to get into that right after this break, and then we'll get back to our Anything Goes Friday and your calls on pretty much any topic you want to talk about, whatever it may be. So stick around. It's the talk media for the rest of us, the Thom Hartmann Program, the place where we help you win the water cooler wars. Stick around. Our 1 hour free podcast recaps our show, and it's available wherever fine podcasts are found. And we have the full 3 hour podcast available over at thomhartmann.com if you want to really support our program. We have a special video up over at thomhartmann.com for supporters of our program, and it's about how a letter that the IRS sent out to 3.9 million Americans saved 700 lives. And you're like, wait a minute, the IRS saved 700 lives? How did that happen? Well, it had to do with Obamacare, and it's a fascinating story. And it turns out that this analysis of this IRS mailing was actually the first time that the federal government has done a study that actually proved that people having access to health care produces fewer deaths. For every 1,648 people who got the letter, there was one fewer premature death. I'll explain the whole thing in the video. It's as I said, it's available over at thomhartmann.com for people who are regular supporters of our program, and it is really worth checking out. And it's a great ad, essentially, for a national health care system. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. I also wanted to just highlight this as speaking as a kid who was bullied. I mean, I was the victim of the school bully, or not the victim, a victim. He didn't just bully me. His name was Dennis, and we had to walk by his house to get to the elementary school. And back in the days when all the kids walked to school, and he beat me up a bunch of times, and he used to, and other kids as well, and mostly the kids he liked to beat up were the what he would call teachers' pets, basically the kids who were doing well in school, and it took a lot of years to really process that as something other than, geez, I'm a weakling kind of thing, And now Washington Post just did this investigation that will just tear you apart. I mean, it's just terrible. Kids as young as 6 are mimicking the president's insults and the cruel way he delivers them. Bottom line, all across America in public schools, elementary schools, we have children who are using Trump's language to bully other children. And they parrot Trump's campaign rhetoric in the faces of their classmates. This from a piece by D'Artagnan for Daily Kos, summarizing the Washington Post piece. They chant racist slogans at school sporting events, cursing at, heckling, or singling out kids to be ostracized because of their skin color or ethnic background. The really tragic thing is some of these kids are so young they really don't even know what they're doing. One girl from rural Idaho took to Twitter to criticize what she saw as hypocritical Trump supporters who demonize Mexicans but choose to vacation in Mexican resorts like Cancun. When she arrived at school the next day, Ashtani Bonilla, then 16, immediately found herself surrounded by boys she had known most of her childhood, calling her an effing Mexican and an illegal. Both African-American and Mexican-American, Bonilla had struggled for years to fit into her 94% white hometown. After some of the same boys defaced her car, even tying it to another car with a rope, Bonilla stopped attending classes. She began to have migraines and panic attacks. Ultimately, she swallowed a bottle of painkillers and was rushed to a hospital in Spokane, over 100 miles away. She survived, but now sees a therapist to cope with the experience. And this isn't just students, by the way. A Fort Worth, Texas teacher, Georgia Clark, ordered her black and Latino students to sit in the back of the classroom and railed against immigrants and the supposed violence they would bring to this country. She said that she was going to call the FBI to deport them. She was ultimately fired for tweeting an appeal to Trump himself, asking that he help her deport undocumented immigrants from Fort Worth schools. And, this is just mind-boggling. So, anyhow, we'll be back.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Donald Trump is setting a bully example, not just for Democratic politicians or Republican politicians, but also for school kids. It's terrible. So once again, we're finding that our president is a foreign asset. And you've heard my opinion of this before. I don't think it's so much that Donald Trump cut a deal with the government of Russia or anything like that. I think that for 20 years, he's been laundering money for Russian oligarchs and Turkish oligarchs and Armenian oligarchs and, probably South Korean oligarchs, places where he's got Trump towers all over the world, Filipino oligarchs. I mean, this is the Panama Papers all over again. These guys, they stash their money in the United States typically by buying real estate because, the Trump Organization was one of the few real estate companies in the United States and certainly in New York that was willing to take cash payments. They take, $40, $50 million in $100 bills. And this is what Trump has been doing all these years. And that's why he won't let his taxes out and all that kind of stuff. Now, you don't hear about that so much on the corporate media, although they are starting to acknowledge it with this thing about the intelligence briefing. But you have been hearing about that for 3 years now, right here on Free Speech TV. I mean, Free Speech TV is where the actual news gets laid out, whether it's Amy Goodman or me or Sonali or Stephanie Miller or David Pakman. I mean, there's just some great talent on Free Speech TV. And when you make your contribution, during a particular show, it not only goes to Free Speech TV, but a very small portion of that actually comes to the show, comes to us to help us deliver our show to Free Speech TV, to pay for our internet connection and to help pay for some of our video production here on this end. And it's all real important. It helps us, it helps and every other show on Free Speech TV, and it helps Free Speech TV. So this is sort of your vote, for the shows that you like. And it's really important that you call now, 877-378-8669, and make your contribution to Free Speech TV. Every little bit helps. The ongoing contributions, becoming a sustaining member during our show, is, super important because that allows Free Speech TV to know in advance what kind of money they're going to have coming in, to budget, to plan for the future. And so please call now, 877-378-8669, so that we can keep talking about what's actually going on in the world, what's actually going on inside the Trump administration, what's actually going on inside the Democratic Party, for that matter. There's just a whole lot of stuff, a whole lot of stories. I know we put, Louise and I put this, and Sean and Nate, we put this show together every day, and we put a lot of work into it. And with Nigel and Sue and everybody else involved in this, and all of that work comes together as this program, and we really try to do it, try to put together a show so that you're fully informed, so that you can go into the day and say, okay, I really do know what the top news stories of the day are, and even the subtleties of them, the things like the economy, our conversations with Richard Wolff, and voting, our conversations with Greg Palast, and the work and research that I do, frankly, that in writing my books on the guns and on the Supreme Court and on voting, and then bringing all that information to this show. We love doing it. I enjoy doing it. And, and we want to continue doing it. We want to continue doing it here on Free Speech TV. And that's only going to happen if enough of you call now and make a contribution, 877-378-8669. With a $20 gift, there's a Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker. Or with a $20 gift, you can get it's sort of like a bumper sticker, the car magnet that says, "I'm voting, are you?" I'm sorry, that's the postcard pack. The car magnet, what does a car magnet look like here, Nate?
It says, "I'm voting, are you?"
It says, "I'm voting, are you?" Cool. Thank you. And with a $50 gift, there's the Just Effing Vote canvas tote bag. This is great, right? And I heard yesterday from the folks at Free Speech TV that a lot of people love the tote bag. And, you can make a $50 gift and get the tote bag, and then you can say, oh, and by the way, also, take $5 a month, on my credit card forever, or $10 a month, or whatever it may be. With a $75 donation, you get the Tag Your It Thom Hartmann Program mug. And with a $240 contribution, you can participate in one of our virtual meet and greets where we all get together on Skype or Zoom or something like that, where, and just have a kind of private off-the-record conversation. So that's with $240. With a $300 gift, you get the Get Out the Vote pack. There's a set of Free Speech TV host postcards to send out to friends and family. Mine says, "I'm voting, are you?" A car magnet, the Get Out the Vote, the Just Effing Vote tote bag, and the Hidden History of the War on Voting, my new book. That's with a $300 gift. With a $360 gift, you get all three of my Hidden History books: the Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment, the Hidden History of the War on Voting, and the Hidden History of the Supreme Court, the Betrayal of America. And with a $1,000 gift, come to Portland and hang out here in the peanut gallery, in the couch in our studio for the last hour of the show, and we'll take you to lunch afterwards, and you'll get to meet everybody. It'll be great. So please call now. Thank you so much. Hey, did you know that Hillary Clinton actually won Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, North Carolina, and Florida in the 2016 election? It's on page 92 of my new book, The Hidden History of the War on Voting. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Jason in Washington Township, Michigan. Hey, Jason, what's on your mind today?
Hey Tom, how are you doing?
Great.
I've called the show a couple times before about my union, and I love my union and get paid good. I just wanted to. I had an argument with my neighbor. He's a big Trumper, and my daughter and my my wife. They worked for my wife's uncle, and he is a Teamster, and I'm not sure if you're familiar. You're from Michigan, and down in Detroit there's the Eastern Market, which is a big produce terminals and stuff.
Yeah.
And
yeah, Louise and I used to go there and buy food when we lived in Westland.
Yeah. And my argument was to my Trumper neighbor was, well, my wife paid for school from her union wage was making $25 an hour, paid for her nursing school. My daughter's doing the same. My son, and that's just working in the summertime. That was just working like 50, 60 hours, and they're paying for this stuff. It's like, well, if wages would keep up with stuff, you could afford stuff. And it's still expensive, but it's just like in my neighbor, that's the unions, and I'm like, come on, give me a break.
Yeah, if the 1968 minimum wage was inflation adjusted, it would be around $23 an hour right now.
And my daughter made $25 an hour this past summer, Tom, loading produce and stuff. And which
is hard work.
And it's hard work, exactly. Yeah. And it's just like, but they paid for my son. He paid for his teaching. He's going to be a teacher, and it's like, what are these people? I mean, my neighbor. he's in debt. I'm not trying to get anybody's business, and it's like, you're worried about my daughter and union job. I mean, they're getting paid decently. What's wrong with that?
Yeah. Well, what's wrong with that, probably from your Trump neighbor's point of view, is that he's not getting that. He's jealous. He doesn't have a union job. Reagan did a really good job of destroying 2/3 of the union jobs in America. I mean, this is the legacy of Reagan.
He's working longer hours. I forgot what he does exactly, but he's working 60 to 70 hours, and he's just mad. He's not getting paid like my.
No, I get it. And what he needs to figure out is that it's the Republican Party who's creating this for him. Jason, I got to move along, but thank you for the call. Dave in Federal Way. Hey, Dave, what's on your mind today?
Hey, not too much, Tom. You know your slogan about despair is not an option?
Yeah.
And
it was Bernie's, and I borrowed it.
Yeah, you said on numerous occasions that, the Trump presidency is bad, but if you look through American history, we've weathered worse as a nation. Well, I slightly disagree with that, because I think what you're not, you're underestimating is the global situation. And I wanted to talk about this Richard Grenell being, the ambassador to Germany, who Trump picked to be as the DNI.
Right.
And also,
who's basically been I read a piece on Daily Kos this morning about it. He's basically been a hate troll on Twitter, and he has no experience in the intelligence community.
Well, I'm glad you brought up hate troll, because as ambassador to Germany, Richard Grenell did something unprecedented. He went to the German opposition party, and some of them are very far right. Germany is also going through a period of reactionary politics. All right. Yeah,
they just had a murder there by a right-wing neo-Nazi guy, a major murder, a massacre. Several people were killed.
Yeah, in Hanau. And this is, and like I said, this is unprecedented for a U.S. ambassador to actually go to the opposition, peddle influence with the opposition party and get involved in German politics.
That would be like the German ambassador to the United States, hanging out with Bernie Sanders and saying, yeah, Bernie's the guy. It's just something ambassadors don't do. They don't involve themselves in the politics of foreign countries.
No, and as DNI, you have to be objective, all right? And we're losing objectivity, all right? In Afghanistan, we're now going to have 3 parallel governments, all right? 3 shadow governments. One is very well established. That's the Taliban shadow government. The other is going to be done by Abdullah. In the last elections, Abdullah should never have been, that goes back to John Kerry. Abdullah should never have been a co-executive of Afghanistan. All right, that just gave the Taliban fuel to say that it's a puppet regime of the United States, all right? And this situation in Idlib, which you also talked to, is coming to a head with mass starvation and people flooding along the border of Turkey. Look, this is the situation around the world is dire. All right. And at one point, I guess Vladimir Putin said it best when he said that all the refugee crisis around the world is a failure of Western liberalism. When the very beacon of Western liberalism and democracy, the United States of America, is also backsliding into, like they say in Russia, a good czar, bad boyar. I mean, where we favor Trump is really not a president. We favor the king. I mean, it's just easier. It's better. I mean, we get security from, hate and animus, and the strong brutalizing the weak and all this sort of thing. I can't imagine a worse time for America to be sliding back into this. And I don't think, another 4 years of the Trump administration is something the world or America we may not survive. I think we will not.
I think you're right, Dave, and I do, yes. When I say we've been through worse times, I mean, we are not yet at the Civil War. We haven't, we don't have Americans killing Americans in large numbers by the hundreds of thousands. But, that said, I don't think that I agree with your assessment that we have never had a president who is so corrupt and who is so clearly willing to throw in with foreign autocratic governments and with basically fascistic, Naziist movements within the United States. We've not, we've had presidents who threw in with a Klan, which is fascistic and Naziist. And in fact, apropos of that, by the way, today is the 56th anniversary of the assassination of Malcolm X, who said, and this is really speaks to what you're talking about. He said, if you're not careful, the newspapers will have you hating the people who are being oppressed and loving the people who are doing the oppressing. He said that 55 years ago today, February 21st, 1965. And so anyhow, back to you, Dave. You, as a former intelligence officer, you've got to be freaking out.
Well, I am, and you also one time you took a caller to task about he was talking about the prosperity of China, and you said, look, China's prosperity is completely overblown. They got more debt than we are. They're in greater economic peril than we are. I agree, Tom, but they're also exponentially beefing up their their 9-dash line in the South China Sea. They're also beefing up their military and foreign.
I think they're getting ready for World War III.
Power projection. Yes, they are. There's a good article that everyone should read. China thinks they can bomb Americans, use nuclear weapons on American cities to win a war. And people, It was in the Business Insider. People need to look at that because China, all right, we're mothballing the Truman 20 years early. We're putting lasers on battleships to stop China's advancements in remotely piloted vehicles. I'm telling you, this is coming to a head. And it couldn't come to a head at a worse possible time.
Right, or with the worst possible president. And this is my, my biggest fear, frankly. Bill Maher keeps saying, well, what if Trump won't leave office if he loses? I have a much larger concern, and that is, what if, the polls are showing that he's not going to win in October, say, or even, October, in the weeks before the election. And he decides to start a war somewhere and either use that as an excuse to suspend the election or use it like Nixon did as a way of whipping up support, as Nixon did in the election of 72. If you're not with us on the war in Vietnam, you're not a patriot, And Bush did that same thing with the war in Iraq and just split Americans against each other over foreign policy, over foreign adventurism. And in both cases, they were based on lies. And, Trump would just follow that same tune. And he's got, a ready-made war just waiting for him in Iran and possibly in North Korea, although I think he's a little afraid of Kim Jong-un. But, geez, it's a mess. Dave, thanks a lot for the call. It's good to hear from you. I appreciate the call. Delvin in Chicago. Hey, Delvin, what's on your mind? Delvin, listening to WCPT. Okay, let's try Will in Las Vegas, watching us on Facebook Live. Hey, Will, what's up?
Hey, Tom, welcome back home.
Thank you.
tomorrow is the Nevada caucus, and I've just spent the last 3 months in Las Vegas observing and working with the Bernie campaign and doing other things. I'm going to say it for the record right now. If you guys thought Iowa was bad, just wait until you see what happens tomorrow in Nevada. It's going to be an absolute disaster.
Why?
Part of the issue, for a lot of reasons. I was in Nevada and in Las Vegas in 2016 when there were only 2 candidates, and it was a disaster. Then you had a lot of people who were trying to vote. They had to wait in line for up to 5 hours just to register to get into the caucus itself. There was a lot of rule breaking that took place.
Haven't they cleaned up a lot of that, though, Will? I understand over 80,000 people have already early voted in Vegas.
Yeah, well, that's part of the problem, Tom, is that you're right. A lot of people have early voted, but there's no method of tracking those cards from where they voted to where they're supposed to be showing up at. Yeah. And so you're talking about 80,000 votes that are floating out there on a wing and a prayer, hoping that they actually show up to the proper caucus and that the people at the caucus are going to be trained well enough, which I can tell you right now they aren't, to be able to apply those cards and the votes. We have got to, and then I talk about California. I've lived in California for the last 8 years and worked as an inspector in California, and there are major issues and insecurities in the California election. And this year, they're using a brand new election system that they've never used in the past, which has no paper trail either, and no means of auditing what the end result is going to be at the end of the day, even at a precinct level.
You're talking statewide, because I know in L.A. County, which is something like 15 million voters or something like that. I mean, or maybe it's fewer than that, but it's 4 million voters. It's a lot of people anyway. In L.A. County, they're using a ballot marking device. And they actually, which produces a paper trail.
And all of that's true, Tom. But to make things even more complicated is that in California, the issue with the California elections is the fact that they have a large number of people who are being mysteriously flipped over to vote by mail, who aren't aware of it, including my mother in the 2018 election. She went to go vote and was not allowed to be issued a regular ballot because she had been flipped to vote by mail.
Right, she had
without
VBM.
her ever doing it without her consent.
Oh, interesting.
And so, the last 8 years I've been tracking this, and the average number of people who are switched to vote by mail who claim that they don't vote by mail and are then given a provisional ballot is 23% of the vote.
Wow.
And I, as an inspector, it's a lot. Yeah. And as an inspector, I would be in charge of 5, 6, 7 precincts, and all of them across the board would be at 23%. Yeah. It's not by accident. And those are the people who show up to vote.
Right.
We don't even know what the numbers are. People who don't vote, who were switched, and their ballots were subverted.
Voting needs to be a right. It's crazy that any governor, the governor of Georgia, Florida, California, cannot take away your gun without going through a court process. But they can take away your vote without even telling you. I mean, that's just wrong. Will, thank you for the call.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
We'll be keeping an eye on Vegas. Tomorrow, by the way, I'll be in Minneapolis. If you're in Minneapolis, we've got events going on tomorrow and Sunday in Minneapolis, and then I'll be coming back home Sunday night. And welcome back. Katie in Hamul, California, watching Free Speech TV. Hey, Katie, what's up?
Wow. Those last 2 phone calls, it just is maybe good that I'm calling about what I am, which is I learned so much from your callers, and they have that. I feel frantic about what's going on. And I've been working out and out, knocking on doors for the Democratic Party for weeks, and I go off tomorrow to a continent that's on fire for 3 months. And so I just got to thinking this week, looking for your book, The Prophet's Way, that I read years and years and years ago, couldn't find it. But I just want to ask you this question. With this catalog of human woe, destruction of the planet, and I don't know that there's any U-turn in sight. I want to know how you see the world through the eyes of the many messages that were in that book. In other words, I'm not a religious person at all, but in that more sort of spiritual way, if you could just give
I'll just tell you bluntly, Katie, I believe that what we are seeing right now is the external manifestation of spiritual warfare happening in the background. There is, in my opinion, an actual battle going on right now between good and evil. And, how it's being played out at levels other than the obvious, the visible, I don't know. But I just feel it. I can just feel it. I remember my mentor, Herr Mueller, who that book is really about. It's really the story of my relationship with Gottfried Mueller. And after World War II, he and his mentor, Avram Polyak, who was a Hasidic Jew, the two of them went from church to church around Germany, basically preaching reconciliation. And a return to good values, and he told me the story of one time he was speaking in a church in Hamburg, in that city way up in northern Germany, and he said as he was speaking he could hear distant cannon fire, and it was like warfare that he could sense just beyond. Right now, this is a guy who'd been through World War II. And when he went back to and I tell the story in the book, when he went back to his hotel room, he had a confrontation, a vision, as it were, a confrontation of this battle, and without describing it in detail. And my sense of it is that that's what's happening right now. It's happening all over the world. And we need to not only be working to do everything we can and taking a deep breath and not being frantic, because that doesn't help us or anybody else, but we also need to be in our prayer life, in our spiritual life, we need to be centering ourselves. We need to be trying to put light and good energy into this thing, every single one of us, because I believe that there really is spiritual warfare going on, and we can be part of that. And warfare is maybe even the wrong metaphor, but I lack another one. But we all need to be putting light into the system, into the giant spiritual soup that we all are. Katie, I'm sorry I can't be more articulate than that, but I hope that that's useful to you. And thank you so much for the call. We'll be right back. It's 52 minutes past the hour. Our 1 hour free podcast recaps our show, and it's available wherever fine podcasts are found. And we have the full 3 hour podcast available over at thomhartmann.com if you want to really support our program. And welcome back. 52 minutes past the hour. Thom Hartmann here with you. And is it Kusei? Is that how you pronounce your name in Campo, California?
Yes, sir.
Hi, Kusei. What's on your mind today?
A good day to you. I just have a suggestion, I guess, is that the Democratic nominee should not debate Donald Trump for the election, because we already know who Donald Trump is, and we should not give him a audience.
My guess is that Donald Trump will not debate the Democratic nominee.
Well, I think he will probably want to, because he could set the rules a little bit better since he is the incumbent. But I also think that not debating him will just piss the hell out of him, too.
Yeah. I respectfully, I disagree. There are so many crimes that Trump has committed. There are so many things that he has done that the American people really don't know about. His destruction of the EPA, his destruction of our public parks, his throwing people off Medicare, his defunding Medicaid and Social Security. These are things that the media has done a terrible job of reporting on. And if we elect, if the Democrats have a nominee who is a good debater, who really knows how to take names and kick ass, and I'm looking at you, Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, if we get somebody who can really debate well and who and they would bring those things up, I think that they could expose Trump for the fraud he is. And
if I may, I think
sure.
the thing is, you cannot debate somebody who has no moral center, so he's going to lie about everything, and it's just.
And then you call out his lies. You say, you've lied 16,000 times. This is just another lie.
That's correct. That's true. I have another point, if I may.
Sure.
They keep saying that, this person, Bernie, is not electable or Warren is not electable. Who the hell is voting for them then? Why are they in the lead? Why is Bernie in the lead if he's not electable?
I know. What they're saying is, that what they want is not a genuinely progressive Democrat. There's, it's really tragic, but there's this movement in the Democratic Party to try to hang on to lobbyist money. That's just really the bottom line.
Yeah, and I believe that Trump took us so far on one side. We don't need somebody to bring us back to the center. We need somebody to swing the pendulum all the way to the other side.
I agree. We need to return to the values of Lyndon Johnson's Great Society and Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal, and that's when we have two candidates in this race on the Democratic side who are saying that message. So anyhow, Kusei, thanks for the call. It's great to hear from you. Keno in Lakeland, Florida, our moose herder Republican. Hey, Keno, what's up?
Yes, hello. Praise be for free speech in your program, Tom. I have sent out two messages as the Moose Herder Coalition organizer. I've sent out two messages recently I want you to be aware of and for you to comment on. I sent a message to Vice President Pence that it's time to join with Mitt Romney and invoke the 25th Amendment and declare Donald Trump unfit, and bring the other Republicans, when they see what he's doing with the intelligence services, it's time to have him declared unfit. Now, the other thing is Amy Klobuchar. I have sent her a message for her to start talking about Nordic capitalism. There is a book called The Nordic Theory of Everything from 2006. Have you ever heard about that book? And it talks about how they organize their social safety net to help their businesses in the Nordic countries. And we can make businesses stronger because in the Nordic countries, they found out the government can organize medical health care cheaper and more efficiently than for-profit insurance companies, and it helps their businesses be strong. So I want...
And the same thing with education, by the way, Keno.
Yeah. Well, that's part of it.
Free college.
But Nordic capital, instead of this socialism stuff that they're trying to foist off as being so terrible and Bernie so terrible, let's talk about Nordic capitalism. Ask you, Tom, let's promote the idea in this book, The Nordic Theory of Everything from 2006. Anu Partanen, a Finnish journalist, young woman, who compared what she saw in Scandinavia with the terrible things here in the United States. So let's say we can have Nordic capitalism here in the United States.
Okay, I'm all in favor of that, and you're absolutely right. And you can see this in any of the developed countries in the world. When the government provides free health care and free education, that is the infrastructure that's the fertile ground out of which grows healthy and successful businesses, particularly smaller entrepreneurial businesses. This is just absolutely essential. If you have free education and free health care, then you feel free to go out and start a business knowing that no matter what, you've always got that in the background. And Keno, thanks a lot for the call, and good on you. We'll be back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
So once again, we're finding that our president is a foreign asset. And you've heard my opinion of this before. I don't think it's so much that Donald Trump cut a deal with the government of Russia or anything like that. I think that for 20 years, he's been laundering money for Russian oligarchs and Turkish oligarchs and Armenian oligarchs and, probably South Korean oligarchs, places where he's got Trump towers all over the world, Filipino oligarchs. I mean, this this is the Panama Papers all over again. These guys, they stash their money in the United States typically by buying real estate because, the Trump Organization was one of the few companies, real estate companies in the United States and certainly in New York that was willing to take cash payments. They take, $40, $50 million in $100 bills. And this is what Trump has been doing all these years. And that's why he won't let his taxes out and all that kind of stuff. Now, you don't hear about that so much on the corporate media, although they are starting to acknowledge it with this thing about the intelligence briefing. But you have been hearing about that for 3 years now, right here on Free Speech TV. I mean, Free Speech TV is where the actual news gets laid out, whether it's Amy Goodman or me or Sonali or Stephanie Miller or David Pakman. I mean, there's just some great talent on Free Speech TV. And, when you make your contribution during a particular show, it not only goes to Free Speech TV, but a very small portion of that actually comes to the show, comes to us to help us deliver our show to Free Speech TV, to pay for our internet connection and to help pay for some of our video production here on this end. And it's all real important. It helps us, it helps and every other show on Free Speech TV, and it helps Free Speech TV. So this is sort of your vote. For the shows that you like. And it's really important that you call now, 877-378-8669, and make your contribution to Free Speech TV. Every little bit helps. The ongoing contributions, becoming a sustaining member during our show is, super important because that allows Free Speech TV to know in advance what kind of money they're going to have coming in, to budget, to plan for the future. And so please call now, 877-378-8669, so that we can keep talking about what's actually going on in the world, what's actually going on inside the Trump administration, what's actually going on inside the Democratic Party, for that matter. There's just a whole lot of stuff, a whole lot of stories. I know we put, Louise and I put this, and Sean and Nate, we put this show together every day, and we put a lot of work into it. And with Nigel and Sue and everybody else involved in this, and all of that work comes together as this program, and we really try to do it. Try to put together a show so that you're fully informed, so that you can go into the day and say, okay, I really do know what the top news stories of the day are, and even the subtleties of them. The things like the economy, our conversations with Richard Wolff, and voting, our conversations with Greg Palast, and the work and research that I do, frankly. That in writing my books on the guns and on the Supreme Court and on voting, and then bringing all that information to this show. We love doing it. I enjoy doing it, and and we want to continue doing it. We want to continue doing it here on Free Speech TV, and that's only going to happen if enough of you call now and make a contribution. 877-378-8669. With a $20 gift, there's a Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker, or with a $20 gift, you can get the it's sort of like a bumper sticker, the car magnet that says "I'm voting, are you?" I'm sorry, that's the postcard pack. The car magnet, what does a car magnet look like here, Nate?
It says, "I'm voting, are you?"
It says, "I'm voting, are you?" Cool. Thank you. And with a $50 gift, there's the Just Effing Vote canvas tote bag. This is great, right? And I heard yesterday from the folks at Free Speech TV that a lot of people love the tote bag. And, you can make a $50 gift and get the tote bag, and then you can say, oh, and by the way, also, take $5 a month, on my credit card forever, or $10 a month, or whatever it may be. With a $75 donation, you get the Tag Your It Thom Hartmann Program mug. And with a $240 contribution, you can participate in one of our virtual meet and greets where we all get together on Skype or Zoom or something like that, where, and just have a kind of private off-the-record conversation. So that's with $240. With a $300 gift, you get the Get Out the Vote pack. There's a set of Free Speech TV host postcards to send out to friends and family. Mine says, "I'm voting, are you?" A car magnet, the Get Out the Vote, the Just Effing Vote tote bag, and The Hidden History of the War on Voting, my new book. That's with a $300 gift. With a $360 gift, you get all 3 of my hidden history books: the hidden history of guns and the Second Amendment, the hidden history of the war on voting, and the hidden history of the Supreme Court and the betrayal of America. And with a $1,000 gift, come to Portland and hang out here in the peanut gallery, in the couch in our studio for the last hour of the show, and we'll take you to lunch afterwards, and you'll get to meet everybody. It'll be great. So please call now. Thank you so much. We have a special video up over at ThomHartmann.com for supporters of our program, and it's about how a letter that the IRS sent out to 3.9 million Americans saved 700 lives. And you're like, wait a minute, the IRS saved 700 lives? How did that happen? Well, it had to do with Obamacare, and it's a fascinating story. And it turns out that this analysis of this IRS mailing was actually the first time that the federal government has done a study that actually proved that people having access to health care produces fewer deaths. For every 1,648 people who got the letter, there was 1 fewer premature death. I'll explain the whole thing in the video. It's you know, as I said, it's available over at ThomHartmann.com for people who are regular supporters of our program, and it is really worth checking out. And it's a great ad, essentially, for a national health care system. 180. The book Dark Towers by David Enrich.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. On the line with us is David Enrich. He is the finance editor at the New York Times and the author of the new book, Dark Towers, Deutsche Bank, Donald Trump, and an Epic Trail of Destruction. His Twitter handle is David Enrich, Enrich. David, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for writing this brilliant book. I mean, I have not yet had an opportunity to read the entire book, but I have dipped into it in a number of places. We did one of our, we do a book report every day when our commercial stations are on break for our non-commercial stations, and we used your book today. I just think it's spectacular. Today we are seeing, across the news, this assertion broadly that from the U.S. intelligence communities that caused Trump to fire some of his intelligence officials, the most senior people. This briefing to the Intelligence Committee and the U.S. House of Representatives that said that the Russians are trying to interfere in our election right now on behalf of Donald Trump, much as they did in 2016, and just openly asserting that they help, that without their help, Trump might not even have become president in 2016. Why is that?
Why would
Russian oligarchs or the Russian government, and I don't know which it is, I've always assumed that Trump had been laundering money for Russian oligarchs for years and years, and therefore they've been supporting him. But maybe it's Putin and the government itself. But why is it that out of Russia comes support for Donald Trump?
Well, that's a good question. I don't have a clear answer to that. What I can tell you is that because of Donald Trump's very close relationship with Deutsche Bank, that he has been in business with Russians for many years now. And that's a kind of a very symbiotic relationship. I think Russians have been trying to get their money out of Russia, and it's hard to do that in part because the Kremlin makes it hard to do that. And so they've found ways using Deutsche Bank as a conduit to get their money out of Russia into countries like Latvia and then into the United States or Western Europe. And in some cases, that money has ended up in Donald Trump's properties, either things that he owns outright or that he has his name on. And I've heard and reported on specific meetings where Deutsche Bank kind of played this middleman role where it was introducing Trump to very, very wealthy Russians, including some with very close ties to the Kremlin. So there's a lot of smoke here, I think, about the really intimate ties, not only between Deutsche Bank and Donald Trump, or Deutsche Bank and Russia, but Deutsche Bank, Trump, and Russia all connected in a row. And I think there's more. We still have a lot more to learn about that, but there's a tremendous amount of circumstantial evidence that connects all three of them.
I recall in the weeks before Donald Trump took the call from President Erdogan of Turkey that the U.S. had to pull out of northern Syria and stab the Kurds in the back, basically, a move that has now led to 800,000 refugees and countless, just massive bloodshed. That Erdogan had made a remark in the that was reported in the press that Donald Trump owned 2 Trump Towers in Turkey and that Erdogan had the ability to take his name off them. To what extent is there any evidence out there that you can report on or have reported on in your book, Dark Towers, we're talking with David Enrich, that Trump's foreign policy is being shaped by the fact that he's got Trump Towers in Turkey, he's got Trump Towers in the Philippines, and so he's dancing with Duterte. He obviously wants to build a Trump Tower and probably, and it was going to, I believe, after the election, had he not won in Moscow. And other countries, and some of the stand countries, he's got towers in some of those places, very, very corrupt countries. To what extent is there any evidence that our foreign policy is being shaped by Trump's financial interests?
I haven't seen any evidence of the foreign policy being affected by that. In fairness, I haven't really looked at that issue. What I have looked at, though, that I think is also kind of answers your question, is that there are other elements of policy that do appear, at least circumstantially, to have been possibly affected by Trump's financial interests. And the clearest example to me is with the Justice Department, where Deutsche Bank, Trump's lender of last resort for the past 20 years, has had a very active criminal investigation into the bank for Russian money laundering that was nearing a conclusion, I understand, toward the end of the Obama administration. And as soon as the Trump administration took over, that investigation just went completely silent. And I've talked to a lot of people inside the bank who said that initially they just figured that this is a product of a presidential transition underway and that it was probably just put on a back burner for a moment, not that it was completely shut down. And then weeks passed and months passed, and now a couple of years have passed. And at least for some people inside the bank, their conclusion is that they are beneficiaries of Trump's Justice Department basically having called off the dogs, because the last thing the president wants to do is draw further attention to the fact that he is deep in debt to a foreign financial institution, especially one that has a very well-established track record of laundering money for wealthy Russians and for people close to the Kremlin. That's not a good look for the president.
Yeah. A friend of mine who's a Democratic member of Congress told me on the QT that there was concern. He mentioned that Justice Department investigation under the Obama administration into Deutsche Bank and suggested that and this was just rumor, right? Let's just be very clear. This is rumor. That Justin Kennedy, Justice Anthony Kennedy's son, who was the head of the big money, the exact name for it. What was the branch at Deutsche Bank?
He was a senior executive in the commercial real estate division.
Okay, and he was the guy who was helping raise money for Trump and signing off on loans for Trump. That he was one of the targets of that criminal investigation, and that Trump used that to convince his father, Anthony Kennedy, who's in great health and just doing fine, that he should resign from the Supreme Court so that he could get was it Brett Kavanaugh on there? Replacing him, so that he could get Brett Kavanaugh on the court. And this was the buzz that was going on in Democratic circles in D.C. Have you discovered anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I've spent a lot of time looking into that, and I think Dark Towers tells this story about what really happened with Justice Kennedy and his son Justin and the Kavanaugh nomination in Deutsche Bank, I think in kind of the first time in an authoritative way.
Can you summarize that very quickly for us?
Yeah, I mean, I want to avoid giving away big details in the book, but I'll tell you that there's something to it, but it's not quite as sexy as certain. It sounds like your source, and I know this rumor's been going around. And I've not seen any evidence that Justin Kennedy was under investigation or anything like that. It is true that Justin Kennedy was one of the kind of lead point people on the Trump relationship in the 2000s, a period during which Trump received well over $1 billion from Deutsche Bank that was basically that no other bank was willing to provide because he had this track record of defaulting on his loans. And the relationship that Justin Kennedy and Donald Trump built during that time period proved very strong and very long-lasting. And so when Trump took office, and obviously he, Scalia was gone. Scalia had died, and so he already had one person to put on or to nominate for the court, and he really wanted a second to make his permanent imprint on the court. And the way to do that with someone like Kennedy, who, as you said, I think was in good health, they needed to increase, the Trump administration, the White House needed to increase Anthony Kennedy's comfort level with how the Trump administration was going to handle stuff, whether it was picking his successor, but also just Trump's personal credibility. And I can tell you, again, without going into too many details, because I don't want to spoil the book, and there was a charm offensive that the White House embarked on, and part of that involved appealing directly to Anthony Kennedy about the work that Justin had done for Donald Trump at Deutsche Bank. Wow. And so it's now, to be clear, I'm not sure there's anything illegal. In fact, I don't think there is anything illegal about that. I'm not sure if there's anything improper. It's certainly unusual. Yeah. And I mean, that was a turning point in the Trump presidency. And conservatives, prior to the Kavanaugh nomination, I think were really losing patience with Trump. His presidency was really on the rocks. And so Deutsche Bank, through these indirect connections that it had fostered over the year with Trump, in some ways really helped stabilize the Trump presidency at this crucial moment. And it's ironic because over and over and over again during Trump's years as a businessman, where he really was not a very successful businessman, Deutsche Bank over and over again came to rescue and stabilize his floundering businesses. And so now you've got him in the first year of his presidency kind of stepping in to stabilize his floundering presidency as well. So it's ironic and interesting, and I think I think it'll surprise a lot of people.
Yeah. We just have 2 minutes here until we hit a hard break that I can't stop. I'm wondering, number one, if you're of the opinion that Donald Trump actually has a negative net worth, as David K. Johnson has been asserting for years and years. And then secondly, what's it going to take for us to find out what the true story is behind, Trump's association with Deutsche Bank and all these others?
Well, I think this book tells that story pretty comprehensively for the first time, but there's still a lot of secrets out there, including things like Trump's net worth, how much he's paying in taxes, and most important, where he's getting his money. And Deutsche Bank has a lot of those answers stored in its electronic vault, and it is ready, I understand, to hand that over to congressional investigators. But it's waiting on the Supreme Court hearing and Supreme Court decision that will take place later this year. And if the Supreme Court rules against the Trumps, Deutsche Bank is going to fork over all this information, and it's probably going to end up in the hands of Congress and therefore the public. So there's a lot more to come on this story, I think.
David Enrich is the author. The book is Dark Towers, Deutsche Bank, Donald Trump, and an Epic Trail of Destruction. I've read parts of the book. It's absolutely extraordinary. I encourage you to get a copy of it. Dark Towers is the book. David, thanks so much for dropping by today and sharing your thoughts with us and your research.
Thanks for having me.
Great talking with you. You've done just a yeoman's job here. It's a brilliant book. We'll be back. It's Anything Goes Friday. We'll be back with more of your calls and more of the news of the day right after this. Stick around.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Back with your calls in just a moment. It's 17 minutes past the hour. The Thom Hartmann Program, fair and only slightly unbalanced. And welcome back. Anthony in Detroit, Michigan, watching us on YouTube. Hey, Anthony, what's on your mind today?
Hey, how's it going? What's on my mind is I'm just keeping an eye on the Patriot Act reauthorization, or certain portions of it that I believe is coming up for a vote in Congress next month. And I just, I'm worried. I think it's called detail records. And I think they should obviously get rid of it. But in my opinion, I just think, especially with our government being so authoritarian as of late, that now is a better time than ever to not have that. So I'd love to hear your thoughts.
I'm with you, Anthony. I didn't realize it was coming up for reauthorization next month. I'll have to dig into that. The other thing about the Patriot Act is, I believe, and we had this conversation a couple of weeks ago, and it seems like this is the case, that the Patriot Act has a provision where if the president were to declare a state of emergency, that he could suspend elections or at least postpone elections. And
gosh,
yeah.
Because every time I heard you say that, I'm like, well, how? Are you kidding me?
Yeah. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
Well, that's my understanding, and you don't take that to the bank. I said that on the air. We had a couple of, I said I'm not sure where this is. A couple of people tweeted to me pieces of the Patriot Act that appear to say that, and I read them on the air, but I'm not sure how it would be interpreted. I'm guessing it would probably end up before the Supreme Court, but who knows? I mean, if this guy goes full authoritarian on us, God only knows, where this country is going to end up. So thanks a lot for the call, Anthony, and for the heads up on that. Leslie in Central Square, New York. Hey, Leslie, what's up?
Hi, Tom. How you doing?
I'm great. What's on your mind today?
Things very much bother me today because we keep doing the same thing day after day and year after year. Every single day is about Trump, whether he's lying or whatever. And all the shows and stuff, they talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. Nothing ever comes up about how do you fix this. Okay, you have to stop the brainwashing. Otherwise, you're never going to fix this country unless you get away from Fox News, Hannity, and all that stuff. Has to go. And you have to have a free press. We don't have a free press. You need the fairness doctrine, and you got to get rid of that law that Clinton put in.
Yeah, the Telecommunications Act of 1996. It's not going to be easy. I can tell you, it ain't going to be easy. But this is what we need is another Teddy Roosevelt. We need somebody to come in and break up big media, start enforcing the Sherman Act. And in fact, I'd like to see a law that says that, media companies can only do media, that companies that are cable TV companies can't own television networks, that companies that are cell phone companies can't own cable news networks, that banks can't can't own radio or television networks or stations, that that media companies have to be media companies. And this is actually what my next book, The Hidden History of The Hidden History of Monopolies and the Destruction of the American Middle Class, is all about. And it's a big issue. It's a real big issue. But Leslie, you put your thumb on something that is absolutely crucial. And although none of that would stop, Rupert Murdoch, he owns a media company, and it is just a media company. So we got to figure out what to do about Fox News. And I guess you just have, you have that voice out there. It would be nice if there was enough independent media that there could be a really serious challenger to Fox News. Free Speech TV does a great job, but they don't have anything close to the throw. They're not on every cable network in the country. So, Leslie, thanks for the call. Great to hear from you. We'll be right back. Our 1 hour free podcast recaps our show, and it's available wherever fine podcasts are found. And we have the full 3 hour podcast available over at thomhartmann.com if you want to really support our program. Welcome back. It's Anything Goes Friday. Lynette in Reno, Nevada. Hey, Lynette, we had an earlier caller from Nevada who is quite upset with the coming, tomorrow it is, the caucuses in Nevada, thinking that they were going to be all screwed up. What say you?
I wanted to let people know that I think things are going to run just fine. I was at a training last night for precinct chairs and site captains. The training went very well. It was easy to follow. They are giving us each site and each precinct is going to get its own set of materials and a very easy to follow script. The data is all set up. The early voting data is locked up in the cloud and will be released when needed to the precinct captains. And so I think it's going to go fine. And I don't know where that guy was getting his information, but I'm very confident that Nevada's going to have a good day tomorrow.
Good.
I'd also like to add that I voted early. The volunteers who ran those locations were very professional and friendly, and all the people in line were there, happy to wait. Well, not happy, but very pleased to be there to vote, and we're not giving any problems. They were all very friendly and cordial. So all of that went really great.
There's something I don't understand,
I
Lynette. Maybe you can. I'm hoping that you can, particularly if you're a precinct committee person or chair, that you would know this.
Sure.
I don't understand. The way a caucus works is people show up and they basically raise their hand and say, "I'm with so and so," and they work, go into groups and anybody below 15% isn't viable, and so they have to pick another group or basically pick another candidate. So, and I get all that, all the in-person stuff, right? It's sort of like the old New England town halls when I lived in New Hampshire and Vermont for 15 years. But I don't understand how early voting plays into that, because you've got voting, which sounds like a primary, and then you've got the caucuses today, or tomorrow rather. How does the voting tie into the caucus?
So when I showed up to early vote, I got a card in which I was able to select up to 5 candidates. So my first choice, second choice, third through fifth.
Right, ranked choice voting.
Ranked choice voting. And what is going to happen is at the caucus tomorrow, after the first alignment of the in-person caucus goers, the precinct chair is going to look at the information that is provided about who early voted and for whom they voted for their first choice. And those first choice selections will be added in for that precinct.
As if they were people standing in the room.
As if they were there in the room. Right. And if the candidate that I voted for early isn't viable, they might be viable in the second alignment. So all of that is going to happen in the caucus math. And I think it's going to go really smoothly. I'm really impressed with the work the party and the volunteers have done.
So what the early vote did was it gave people the ability to essentially participate in the caucus without having to physically show up.
Exactly, and I think that accounts for the fantastic turnout that we've had, because there are a lot of people who work on Saturday and can't show up or just prefer to get their vote banked early. So I think I'm really confident it's going to look great tomorrow.
That's great. What's the media landscape like in Nevada right now? What ads are you seeing on TV? Who's owning the airwaves, I guess, is the question.
Well, Bloomberg, even though he's not on the ballot, he's showing up on our TV. We're seeing a lot of Bernie, Warren, Klobuchar, and Tom Steyer, as well as Buttigieg. Those seem to be no
Biden?
The ones that are showing up. Gosh, not as much. I haven't seen him as much. I watch a lot of MSNBC. I haven't seen a lot of Biden ads.
That's very interesting. Very interesting. Lynette, thanks for the scoop, the straight scoop on what's going on in Nevada tomorrow.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I appreciate it, and thanks. Great talking with you. And keep saying, I've got the smartest listeners. It's such an honor to be here with you guys every single day. Smartest listeners and viewers in the world. And I learn from you as much as you learn from me. Thank you. We'll be back.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Back with Anything Goes Friday right after this break. Stick around. It's the place where despair is not an option. The Thom Hartmann Program. So once again, we're finding that our president is a foreign asset. And you've heard my opinion of this before. I don't think it's so much that Donald Trump cut a deal with the government of Russia or anything like that. I think that for 20 years, he's been laundering money for Russian oligarchs and Turkish oligarchs and Armenian oligarchs and probably South Korean oligarchs, places where he's got Trump Towers all over the world, Filipino oligarchs. I mean, this is the Panama Papers all over again. These guys, they stash their money in the United States typically by buying real estate, because the Trump Organization was one of the few real estate companies in the United States and certainly in New York that was willing to take cash payments. They take $40, $50 million in $100 bills, and this is what Trump has been doing all these years, and that's why he won't let his taxes out and all that kind of stuff. Now, You don't hear about that so much on the corporate media, although they are starting to acknowledge it with this thing about the intelligence briefing. But you have been hearing about that for 3 years now, right here on Free Speech TV. I mean, Free Speech TV is where the actual news gets laid out, whether it's Amy Goodman or me or Sonali or Stephanie Miller or David Pacman. I mean, there's just some great talent on Free Speech TV. And, when you make your contribution during a particular show, it not only goes to Free Speech TV, but a very small portion of that actually comes to the show, comes to us to help us deliver our show to Free Speech TV, to pay for our internet connection and to help pay for some of our video production here on this end. And it's all real important. It helps us, it helps and every other show on Free Speech TV, and it helps Free Speech TV. So this is sort of your vote, for the shows that you like. And it's really important that you call now, 877-378-8669, and make your contribution to Free Speech TV. Every little bit helps. The ongoing contributions, becoming a sustaining member during our show, is, super important because that allows Free Speech TV to know in advance what kind of money they're going to have coming in, to budget, to plan for the future. And so please call now, 877-378-8669, so that we can keep talking about what's actually going on in the world, what's actually going on inside the Trump administration, what's actually going on inside the Democratic Party, for that matter. There's just a whole lot of stuff, a whole lot of stories. I know we put, Louise and I put this, and Sean and Nate, we put this show together every day, and we put a lot of work into it. And with Nigel and Sue and everybody else involved in this, and all of that work comes together as this program, and we really try to do it, try to put together a show so that you're fully informed, so that you can go into the day and say, okay, I really do know what the top news stories of the day are, and even the subtleties of them, the things like the economy, our conversations with Richard Wolff, and voting, our conversations with Greg Palast, and the work and research that I do, frankly, that in writing my books on the guns and on the Supreme Court and on voting, and then bringing all that information to this show. We love doing it. I enjoy doing it. And, and we want to continue doing it. We want to continue doing it here on Free Speech TV. And that's only going to happen if enough of you call now and make a contribution, 877-378-8669. With a $20 gift, there's a Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker. Or with a $20 gift, you can get it's sort of like a bumper sticker, the car magnet that says, "I'm voting, are you?" I'm sorry, that's the postcard pack. The car magnet, what does a car magnet look like here, Nate?
It says, "I'm voting, are you?"
It says, "I'm voting, are you?" Cool. Thank you. And with a $50 gift, there's the Just Effing Vote canvas tote bag. This is great, right? And I heard yesterday from the folks at Free Speech TV that a lot of people love the tote bag. And, you can make a $50 gift and get the tote bag, and then you can say, oh, and by the way, also, take $5 a month, on my credit card forever, or $10 a month, or whatever it may be. With a $75 donation, you get the Tag Your It Thom Hartmann Program mug. And with a $240 contribution, you can participate in one of our virtual meet and greets where we all get together on Skype or Zoom or something like that, where, and just have a kind of private off-the-record conversation. So that's with $240. With a $300 gift, you get the Get Out the Vote pack. There's a set of Free Speech TV host postcards to send out to friends and family. Mine says, "I'm voting, are you?" A car magnet, the Get Out the Vote, the Just Effing Vote tote bag, and the Hidden History of the War on Voting, my new book. That's with a $300 gift. With a $360 gift, you get all three of my Hidden History books: the Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment, the Hidden History of the War on Voting, and the Hidden History of the Supreme Court and the Betrayal of America. And with a $1,000 gift, come to Portland and hang out here in the peanut gallery, in the couch in our studio for the last hour of the show, and we'll take you to lunch afterwards, and you'll get to meet everybody. It'll be great. So please call now. Thank you so much. Hey, did you know that Hillary Clinton actually won Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, North Carolina, and Florida in the 2016 election? It's on page 92 of my new book, The Hidden History of the War on Voting. So after the debate earlier this week, one of the memes that was floating around and was being aggressively promoted on Twitter and on Facebook and apparently in some op-eds around the country is that Elizabeth Warren was angry and mean. We can't have angry women, right? This is something that Barack Obama had to deal with. He's an angry black man, he temperamentally, I think he was able to just kind of rise above that and even deal with issues that should have pissed off anybody in a way that was very thoughtful and, he could put out a zinger too. But Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez really nailed it. She tweeted, Elizabeth Warren was not mean nor angry. She was effective. And by the way, we are allowed to be angry about racial profiling. You're allowed to be angry about sexual harassment or at big banks committing fraud against single parents. Anger at injustice is quite appropriate. And this was in response to Jennifer Rubin tweeting. I believe Jennifer Rubin writes for the Washington Post. And maybe it's not the same Jennifer, but I believe it is. And she's a Republican. Her tweet said, mean and angry Warren is not a good look. Right. And Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez going after that. And the other thing I want to share with you, I got a note from James Preston Allen, who is the publisher of Random Length News, a newspaper in the Southern California area, and a local, I believe it's a weekly paper. And it was about the RNC. The RNC is sending out deceptive census mailers 1 month before the official census forms go out. They go out next month. The RNC has sent out something that looks just like the census. And they're doing this. People fill it out and they send it back. It asks for a donation. It's actually for the RNC. It asks for all kinds of personal information that the Republicans want to have on you. These are some of the news sources. Cleveland.com. Don't confuse this political notice with the real 2020 U.S. Census coming in March. The GOP is just fishing for information and money. The Oklahoman says GOP fundraising forms mimic official census documents. The mailers are labeled 2020 Congressional District Census and printed with the words, and this is all in caps in large black type, do not destroy official document. The Oklahoman reports in heavy ink on the envelope are the words do not destroy official document and 2020 Congressional District Census written across the top. The last time the RNC sent these mailers in a census year, Congress passed a bill banning deceptive census lookalike mailers in response. This is from the newspaper The Oklahoman. Apparently, the RNC is just fine breaking that law because why? Well, the group or the agency, the federal agency that enforces election violations, the Federal Election Commission, the FEC, is lacking enough commissioners to have a quorum. So they literally cannot even have a meeting because Trump will not appoint commissioners to that body. And a few resigned. And as a result, we do not have a Federal Election Commission for this election, which means the Republicans are free to cheat in any way they want, and they will not be called out for it, and they will not be stopped. The Washington Post says the RNC's 2020 mailers are confusing voters across the country. Phony census mailers are enough of a concern. They mention that law. In Pennsylvania, quote, these are all from newspapers in these states. In Pennsylvania, the Republican National Committee has mailed forms called the 2020 Congressional District Census to selected homes in Montgomery and Berks counties in recent weeks. Now, those are both heavily Democratic counties. One lawmaker worries the form is purposely deceiving residents. Ohio, at least some people in northern Ohio and maybe beyond recently received an official document, in quotes, in the mail labeled the 2020 Congressional District Census. Don't confuse it with the real 2020 U.S. Census notices that will begin going out in the mail in mid-March. As explained in the enclosed materials, the 2020 Congressional District Census is from the Republican National Committee, collecting information on everything from political affiliation and social media habits to thoughts on tax cuts and Russia, plus a chance to donate. In Michigan, several people in mid-Michigan say they're confused after getting a letter saying President Donald Trump requested a census of every congressional district to be done right away. It's causing confusion because the letter isn't coming from the government, but it looks like a census letter. It's got your name on it, do not destroy, and a lot of tracking numbers. And it goes on: South Carolina, California, Indiana, Oklahoma. The Republicans are cheating. You know, and Trump is welcoming cheating efforts from other countries. The Republicans are cheating this way. The Republican secretaries of state are still aggressively purging people from the voting rolls. If you live in a state that has a Republican secretary of state, double check your voter registration, because odds are very high that you will have been removed, particularly if you live in a neighborhood that typically votes Democratic, if you live in a college town, if you're African American, or if you're Hispanic. Or if you're Asian, actually. They're purging Asian names as well, another relatively small name pool. So, you know, pay attention. Deborah in Denver, Colorado. Hey, Deborah, thanks for watching us on YouTube. What's up?
Hi, Tom. Thank you for taking my call. I just want to talk about Medicare and the public option. Mm-hmm. And I'm really sick and tired of Bernie getting attacked with how will you pay for Medicare when we all know that it's cheaper.
Yeah.
We know that it's cheaper than private insurance. And the real question is, what are we going to do with all the money that we save? Even Yale came out with a study showing it's cheaper.
The Koch brothers did a study that found it was cheaper. You know,
right?
Yes.
So my question to you is, the establishment candidates are banking on the public option or Medicare for all who want it. My question is, if Obamacare, which includes pre-existing conditions for protection, gets defeated in court and the public option never made it into fruition in the first place, who will stop the Republicans from picking it apart over and over again? Will the healthcare system ever be fixed? Do they even want it fixed?
Well, the Republicans don't want it fixed. That's why you've got 20 some odd, as I recall, Republican governors who are suing to overturn Obamacare. And that lawsuit has now reached the Supreme Court, and they were supposed to hear the arguments this spring. And they announced, John Roberts announced, and I think this was just, throwing a bone to the Republicans, that they will actually not hear the arguments until next spring, so that it will not be in the election, right? In other words, so that people won't realize that Donald Trump and the 20 some odd Republican governors are actually suing at the Supreme Court to take down Obamacare, which would eliminate that restriction on pre-existing conditions, which means that if the Supreme Court rules in favor of these Republican governors and Donald Trump, then your health insurance company will be able to start saying to you, if you get sick, oh, we're not going to pay for that because that was a pre-existing condition. You had that diabetes before you got your policy with us, and so we're not going to cover it. Or you smoked when you were a teenager, and so when you get lung cancer, we're not going to cover that. Or you took an acne medication when you were a kid, and now you've got leukemia. We see that there's an association. So that's a pre-existing condition. And they used to nail about half of all Americans who would make claims, and they would say, no, we don't have to pay for that because it's a pre-existing condition. It would also do away with the lifetime caps. My wife almost hit her lifetime cap on our policy that we had, through our company when she had breast cancer. And, got a letter from the insurance company saying, another $100,000 and you're out. And, no more insurance. And then you're uninsurable. And that we'll go back to that. I mean, this is like, these are not just the bad old days. I mean, this is just terrible. And then, of course, there'll be no limit on how much profit that they can make. Right now, health insurance companies, the big ones are limited to a 15% profit, the small ones to 20% profit. And, of course, Medicare makes no profit at all. Its overhead is 3 to 4%. Right. So we will go back to that, and it's all going to depend on the election, Deborah. I mean, we've got to take back the Senate, and we've got to take it back in a big way. And there's a bunch of vulnerable Republicans this time. Over 20 Republicans are running for re-election in the Senate in this cycle. So we've got to take back the Senate, and we've got to keep control of the House and increase our majority in the House. Although there's not a filibuster in the House, so it's not, the majority part is not all that critical. But we've got to take the White House. Without those three things, if the Supreme Court rules as they, I would say almost certainly will, particularly given that Brett Kavanaugh and Neil Gorsuch are on the court. Yeah, now it's going to be ugly. It's going to be real ugly, and so it's another reason to vote.
What do you think about Medicare for all who want it. What do you think the holes are in that?
The hole is, the big hole is that it allows the private for-profit insurance companies to still take a large bite out of the market. The larger your, and they can do it selectively, they can decide who they're going to insure. So they'll insure the healthy people, which means that the Medicare option, the Medicare portion will be, the government will be dealing with the sicker people. And so the for-profit insurance companies will end up skimming the cream off, and younger people, healthier people. This is exactly what is happening. In 2005, George W. Bush and the Republicans passed legislation called Medicare Part C, which allowed for privatized Medicare, and it's called Medicare Advantage. And on these privatized Medicare plans, they have all, they're filled with gotchas. If you're out of network, you've got to pay. If you get certain kinds of illnesses, you're not covered. If there's a whole bunch of gotchas in Medicare Advantage, and so but they aggressively sell this to people who just turned 65, because most people don't start getting sick and toward end of life weakness essentially until they're in their 70s or even their late 70s. So the Medicare Advantage people are they're skimming off the top. They're being reimbursed by Medicare. Plus, the people are paying premiums to them. They're making a huge amount of profit, these companies, particularly United Healthcare through AARP. And AARP is making a fortune on this stuff. And now they have almost a third of all people over 65 are on Medicare Advantage, which is making it harder for Medicare to survive, because Medicare Advantage will get rid of you when you get sick. And and kick you back onto regular Medicare. So regular Medicare is ending up with the sickest people, and the same thing would happen in the market for people under 65 if we allow the private health insurance companies to continue to exist essentially, while you also have the public option. That's the danger. That public option, it's a great first step, but it also will has the potential to really harm Medicare over the long term. And the health insurance companies will game it to do exactly that, just like they're doing with Medicare, for people over 65 right now. So
why isn't anybody calling that out, though? Why isn't anybody on the stage calling that out?
I believe Elizabeth Warren pointed that out when Buttigieg was, when she was criticizing Buttigieg's, Medicare for whoever wants it. I believe that she made that point. Maybe not as long-winded as I did, but I think she made that point. But that's the situation. Deborah, I got to move along, but thank you for the call. It's great to hear from you. Josh in Norway, Maine. Hey, Josh, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom. Thank you very much, and I should have said Mr. Hartmann for taking my call.
No, I'm Tom. That's fine, Josh. What's up?
And also, I'm watching you on Free Speech TV. Wanted to thank them and you for helping educate me as much as possible when I can see you guys.
Yeah, it's a great TV network, and we're very pleased to be on there. So what's your point here, Josh? We're up against a break here.
Okay, sorry. Basically, you have an ad on Free Speech TV that talks about farming and regenerative farming, where carbon returning to the soil. Well, I'm just curious about your thoughts on hemp, kind of going back, where if you research, Henry Ford first vehicle ran on hemp ethanol and was constructed out of hemp combustible plastic.
Yes.
That's what.
Yeah, hemp is a great crop. It actually converts carbon dioxide in the air into plant fiber, cellulose, more efficiently than trees do. It grows more rapidly than trees do. So, planting fields of hemp and using hemp is a great way to at least somewhat stabilize carbon. Hemp doesn't destroy the soil like some crops do, some monocrops, although, again, monocrop agriculture is never a wonderful thing. But it doesn't exhaust the soil, the way that...
from Monsanto.
Yeah, exactly. So, I'm a big fan of hemp. You can also extract CBD oil from hemp. And, one of our advertisers is cbdistillery.com. They've got, there's the CBD oil. People use it to help them get to sleep and things. I mean, there's so much that comes out of hemp. It's extraordinary, and we need to be growing it. We'll be back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
It's Anything Goes Friday on your support group, your media support group for we the people of the United States of America. And welcome back, Cliff in Santa Clarita, California. Hey, Cliff, what's on your mind? Thanks for watching Free Speech TV.
Oh, you're welcome. Good morning, Fred. Happy Friday.
And Barney, by the way, I'm on the the FreedomWorks list as Barney Rubble, and they keep sending me things.
Oh, well, excellent.
Yeah.
Diversity.
Indeed.
Hey, us loyal listeners love you for many reasons, Tom, but I just want to acknowledge your policy of not talking about people that aren't there to defend themselves. It's really decent of you, and I don't know any other talk show hosts that do that. It speaks to your integrity, and I just
thank
wanted
you.
to
I will talk
that.
about Bill Barr when he's not here to defend himself. but he's a politician, so he's fair game. Anyhow, back to you, Cliff.
Of all the law-breaking and inappropriate things done by Trump, nothing he's done is worse than Obama wearing a tan suit. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, and saluting with a cup of coffee in his hand. God forbid.
Yeah. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Anyways, I've been thinking about this for a while, and then when you mentioned bullying, I called up because, we don't expect much from our first ladies while they're in office. Usually they get behind one issue. Michelle Obama with her nutrition agenda and planting an organic garden. I even remember Lady Bird Johnson. Her thing was beautifying the highways and stuff.
That's correct,
right?
yeah. Planting gardens all over the country.
Right. And, okay, so Melania Trump's one issue is the grammatically incorrect be best, right? Which is about combating bullying, while her husband is like, number one bullier of the world.
Right.
No
the irony is not lost on most of us, yes.
Yeah, but it's just like nobody brings it up. Is she like the laziest do-nothing first lady ever, or is it just, I don't know, they just did it for a PR thing at one point and they're just not going to go through with it?
I have no idea how this came about. Stephanie Grisham is now the press secretary for the White House. She used to be Melania's press secretary, so she might be a person to ask that question of, but I guarantee you she's not going to come on this show and answer it. But let's give Melania, her due. She is at least doing something and is trying to promote something that's positive. And, it's kind of tragic that every time she pops up with a tweet about this or something like that, everybody jumps on her and says, but what about your husband? It's got to be tough for her. And she did not want to be in the White House. She spent the first 6 months in New York City because they did not expect Donald Trump to win the presidency. This was just basically a PR stunt to help him get his tower in Moscow going, and to give him more credibility to borrow more money from Deutsche Bank, backed by oligarch billionaires around the world. Probably laundered money. But I actually feel sorry for her. And I realize, she's kind of the whole trophy wife thing and all that stuff. But I feel sorry for her. I don't know how to say it beyond that. I have some
she's in a
empathy
predicament for sure.
Yeah. I would not want to be her in her situation. Although, probably life isn't terrible for her at all. But at least she's speaking out, and I think not bullying is an important issue, and so maybe she's moderating Trump a little bit. I hope. I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt. Cliff, thanks a lot for the call. Great to hear from you. It's 52 minutes past the hour. We'll be back with more of your calls on Anything Goes Friday here on the Thom Hartmann Program, occupying the media 3 hours a day, 5 days a week, right here. Our 1 hour free podcast recaps our show, and it's available wherever fine podcasts are found. And we have the full 3 hour podcast available over at thomhartmann.com if you want to really support our program. We have a special video up over at thomhartmann.com for supporters of our program, and it's about how a letter that the IRS sent out to 3.9 million Americans saved 700 lives. And you're like, wait a minute, the IRS saved 700 lives? How did that happen? Well, it had to do with Obamacare, and it's a fascinating story. And it turns out that this analysis of this IRS mailing was actually the first time that the federal government has done a study that actually proved that people having access to health care produces fewer deaths. For every 1,648 people who got the letter, there was one fewer premature death. I'll explain the whole thing in the video. It's you know, as I said, it's available over at thomhartmann.com for people who are regular supporters of our program, and it is really worth checking out. And it's a great ad, essentially, for our national health care system. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, and Laura in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Hey, Laura, thanks for listening to SiriusXM. What's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. I am really concerned about the election, and I know everybody else has been talking about it, but is there any way that any of our past presidents can step in and make sure that it's a legitimate
You know, the
election?
Carter Center used to certify, I mean, they certify elections all over the world, and they used to do some in the United States, but the Republican states have banned them. In fact, I think it was the 2004 election. The Carter Center was trying to certify an election in Mississippi, as I recall. It was one of the southern states. And they were threatened with arrest. So, Laura, I'm going to drop you. I'm sorry, there's some really funny noises coming off your phone there. But I don't see that happening. I don't, you know, and particularly in the red states, I don't see any good government stuff going on here. The Republican Party is completely committed to suppressing the vote, to stealing the vote, basically. I mean, you know, we should call voter suppression what it is, vote stealing. And, you know, that's why I wrote this book, The Hidden History of the War on Voting. And it lays out, you know, all of the ways that Republicans are stealing your vote and the ways that you can fight back against it. And you know, this is stuff that we need to be doing. We need to be paying attention to. Mike in Chicago. Hey, Mike, thanks for listening to WCPT. What's up?
From what you just said, and your guest that came out with the book Dark Tower, how could we even say that America is the home of the brave and the land of the free when we cannot guarantee that our votes are going to be counted? We can't guarantee safety amongst the people that live in this country.
And we can't guarantee that our president's not an agent of a foreign country.
Absolutely. So my question is, why isn't the media, the news outlets, the newspapers, although you have individuals who write books, call Donald Trump out for what he is? He's a traitor. He is a collaborator. And also an asset to the Russian government that is helping bring this country down. And everything that he's done and everything that he has said has been for the benefit of Putin. And no one will call him out on it.
And Trump. And I think that, you know, Trump has been laundering money for Russian oligarchs and other oligarchs around the world for so long that they basically own him. That's my personal opinion. And I think that the reason why the media isn't talking about this, I mean, to some extent they dance around it, but they're trying to be reporters as opposed to you know, offering editorial insights. But increasingly, people are calling Trump out for what he apparently is, and that's a good thing. We'll be back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
We say fight back!
So once again, we're finding that our president is a foreign asset. And you've heard my opinion of this before. I don't think it's so much that Donald Trump cut a deal with the government of Russia or anything like that. I think that for 20 years, he's been laundering money for Russian oligarchs and Turkish oligarchs and Armenian oligarchs and probably South Korean oligarchs, places where he's got Trump towers all over the world. Filipino oligarchs. I mean, this is the Panama Papers all over again. These guys, they stash their money in the United States typically by buying real estate because, the Trump Organization was one of the few real estate companies in the United States and certainly in New York that was willing to take cash payments. They take, $40, $50 million in $100 bills. And this is what Trump has been doing all these years. And that's why he won't let his taxes out and all that kind of stuff. Now, you don't hear about that so much on the corporate media, although they are starting to acknowledge it with this thing about the intelligence briefing. But you have been hearing about that for 3 years now, right here on Free Speech TV. I mean, Free Speech TV is where the actual news gets laid out, whether it's Amy Goodman or me or Sonali or Stephanie Miller or David Pakman. I mean, there's just some great talent on Free Speech TV. And, when you make your contribution during a particular show, it not only goes to Free Speech TV, but a very small portion of that actually comes to the show, comes to us to help us deliver our show to Free Speech TV, to pay for our internet connection and to help pay for some of our video production here on this end. And it's all real important. It helps us, it helps and every other show on Free Speech TV, and it helps Free Speech TV. So this is sort of your vote. For the shows that you like. And it's really important that you call now, 877-378-8669, and make your contribution to Free Speech TV. Every little bit helps. The ongoing contributions, becoming a sustaining member during our show is, super important because that allows Free Speech TV to know in advance what kind of money they're going to have coming in, to budget, to plan for the future. And so please call now, 877-378-8669, so that we can keep talking about what's actually going on in the world, what's actually going on inside the Trump administration, what's actually going on inside the Democratic Party, for that matter. There's just a whole lot of stuff, a whole lot of stories. I know we put, Louise and I put this, and Sean and Nate, we put this show together every day, and we put a lot of work into it. And with Nigel and Sue and everybody else involved in this, and all of that work comes together as this program, and we really try to do it. Try to put together a show so that you're fully informed, so that you can go into the day and say, okay, I really do know what the top news stories of the day are, and even the subtleties of them. The things like the economy, our conversations with Richard Wolff, and voting, our conversations with Greg Palast, and the work and research that I do, frankly. That in writing my books on the guns and on the Supreme Court and on voting, and then bringing all that information to this show. We love doing it. I enjoy doing it, and and we want to continue doing it. We want to continue doing it here on Free Speech TV, and that's only going to happen if enough of you call now and make a contribution. 877-378-8669. With a $20 gift, there's a Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker, or with a $20 gift, you can get it's sort of like a bumper sticker, the car magnet that says "I'm voting, are you?" I'm sorry, that's the postcard pack. The car magnet, what does a car magnet look like here, Nate? It says, "I'm voting, are you?" It says, "I'm voting, are you?" Cool, thank you. And with a $50 gift, there's the Just Effing Vote canvas tote bag. This is great, right? And I heard yesterday from the folks at Free Speech TV that a lot of people love the tote bag. And, you can make a $50 gift and get the tote bag, and then you can say, oh, and by the way, also, take $5 a month, on my credit card forever, or $10 a month, or whatever it may be. With a $75 donation, you get the Tag Your It Thom Hartmann Program mug. And with a $240 contribution, you can participate in one of our virtual meet and greets where we all get together on Skype or Zoom or something like that, where, and just have a kind of private off-the-record conversation. So that's with $240. With a $300 gift, you get the Get Out the Vote pack. There's a set of Free Speech TV host postcards to send out to friends and family. Mine says, I'm voting, are you? A car magnet, the Get Out the Vote, the Just Effing Vote tote bag, and the Hidden History of the War on Voting, my new book. That's with a $300 gift. With a $360 gift, you get all three of my hidden history books: the hidden history of guns and the Second Amendment, the hidden history of the war on voting, and the hidden history of the Supreme Court and the betrayal of America. And with a $1,000 gift, come to Portland and hang out here in the peanut gallery, in the couch in our studio for the last hour of the show, and we'll take you to lunch afterwards, and you'll get to meet everybody. It'll be great. So please call now. Thank you so much. We have a special video up over at ThomHartmann.com for supporters of our program, and it's about how a letter that the IRS sent out to 3.9 million Americans saved 700 lives. And you're like, wait a minute, the IRS saved 700 lives? How did that happen? Well, it had to do with Obamacare, and it's a fascinating story. And it turns out that this analysis of this IRS mailing was actually the first time that the federal government has done a study that actually proved that people having access to health care produces fewer deaths. For every 1,648 people who got the letter, there was one fewer premature death. I'll explain the whole thing in the video. It's you know, as I said, it's available over at ThomHartmann.com for people who are regular supporters of our program, and it is really worth checking out. And it's a great ad, essentially, for a national health care system with more poignancy.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
I wanted to talk about biodiversity. Biodiversity is the essential product of evolution. As there are ecological niches, there are places in the deep sea where life could survive and life adapts itself to the deep sea. There are places on high mountains where life can survive and life adapts itself to rarefied air. All these different environments all around the world, and pretty much every place, life figures out a way to survive and prosper, as it were, to grow, and biodiversity provides many benefits to us as humans. For one thing, it provides resilience to the system, to the living systems that support us. It provides resilience to our agricultural systems, to the systems that clean our air, which is mostly our trees, to the systems that clean our water, which is trees and soil and plants rooted in the soil, and biodiversity is really essential to having a functioning planet. It's sort of like your body. You've got all these different organs in your body, and they all do different things. And you can live without one kidney, but you can't live without both. A certain loss of, or you can live without one kidney, but you can't live without. And maybe if you took out a kidney and half your liver, and maybe you could make it, but as you start decreasing the components of a complex system like a human body, you start decreasing its ability to survive. And as we are decreasing biodiversity, as we're killing off species, there's 1 million plant and animal species that have been identified now by scientists that are at risk of going extinct within the next few decades. And if that happens, that loss of biodiversity simplifies the world's ecosystem in a way that weakens it, that makes it more fragile, just like if you were to start losing parts of your body. So a group of 23 ex-ministers from 6 different continents, this was founded by Madeleine Albright, the former U.S. Secretary of State, has come together and proposed that we should set aside 30% of the planet's land mass And governments should help fund this, because a lot of this is going to be actually in poor countries where there are still jungles and savannas and forests and things that have not been stripped out and replaced by development. That 30% of the countries of the world's landmass and 30% of the oceans should be set aside as sanctuaries to preserve biodiversity. And this is solid stuff. And it's very, very real, and it's so important. And just to give you an example of the importance of biodiversity, the new study out, this is from Oregon State University, researchers at Oregon State University, they found that bears in southeast Alaska play a crucial role in keeping the biodiversity of the forest going by eating berry seeds and then pooping out the berry seeds as they're wandering around the forest. And then the small rodents mine the bears' butt berries, it says in the article, for actual berry seeds, which they then bury in the ground to later snack on. There's an article by Drew Millard. And, spot on. And these bears, and I believe I shared this story with you a couple of years ago, that in the Pacific Northwest, they found that there were some of the rivers, when the rivers were dammed and the salmon stopped running, that certain kinds of trees were dying and the forests were becoming sick, and nobody could figure out why. Why is that? What do these trees need? Well, it turned out that the bears in these forests had been eating salmon out of the rivers, and salmon go from rivers out to the ocean and back, and so salmon are actually fairly high in iodine, from salt water. And that iodine got into the bears by eating the salmon, and then the bears pooped the iodine into the forest, and some of these kinds of trees actually needed the iodine. It was an essential nutrient. And so here you've got, life cycling, the salmon eating plants out in the ocean, and then, bringing that iodine up the rivers when they come up to spawn, and then the bears eating that. So this is all really important stuff, and thus, if you start losing the bears, you're going to start losing the herb, the plant biodiversity, because you're not going to have the principal spreader of seeds for berries going on anymore, and you're going to start seeing berries start dying off in the forest, and they're an important part of ground cover, and because many of them have thorns, they're also an important habitat for small rodents, for chipmunks and mice, and for small birds that actually, literally have their young, scrub jays, for example, and some kinds of sparrows actually, raise their young inside these berry bushes because the predators can't get to them because of the thorns. And so if you get rid of the bears, all that other stuff goes away. And now you've got, Senator Lisa Murkowski in Alaska and the Trump administration trying to open up the Songus National Forest to the logging industry, which is going to knock out the bears. So it's extraordinary stuff. Now, there's another article. This is from MNN.com. 5 reasons why biodiversity is a big deal. And they cover all the ones that I've already talked about. But the 5th one, I think, is just extraordinary. And that is the final point that I would make about biodiversity is biodiversity produces awe. It's a spiritual component. It's actually, there have been some really good studies done that find that when people are in hospital rooms that have a window that looks out on greenery, on forest land, that those people heal faster than people who are in hospital rooms that have no window. That people who go into nature every day, Louise and I walk for a mile or so, and we walk, along the Columbia River and just see all this beautiful stuff, all this nature. It is so healing that people who have daily contact with nature have less depression, less anxiety, lower blood pressure. I mean, there's just this whole collection of positive physical attributes. But I would say that the spiritual attribute is really also very, very important. When I see a bird that's uncommon, or when I see a butterfly that I haven't seen before, and they're all vanishing like crazy, and you look at that and go, wow, this is the diversity of life on this planet. It's awe, wonder, right? This is an important thing for us to experience. It feeds us spiritually, emotionally, at our deepest levels. And so these are all good, solid reasons, the beauty of nature, to maintain biodiversity and why biodiversity is such a big deal. That we need to be paying attention to this and taking seriously this call from Madeleine Albright and her group to set aside 30% of the planet's landmass and 30% of the ocean to, no ships, no development, to be sinks for biodiversity, places where the planet can retain its biodiversity. If we don't, we're going to be living in a very, very, very poor world.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
We'll be right back with Anything Goes Friday. Pick up your calls. I also have to tell you about Bloomberg and Pat Toomey. This is troubling. And welcome back. Oh, let's see here. Trying to get who's been on hold longest. It's Bill in Chicago watching us on YouTube. Hey, Bill, thanks for hanging on there. What's up?
Hi.
Hey, Bill, you're on the air.
I'd like to wake people up to self-investing. That's what we need to be able to do. We should be able to use our own money, especially those of us who are in pension plans. It's not voodoo math. Pensions are in trouble all over the world because people are living longer.
No, pensions are in trouble in the United States because during the Reagan administration, they changed the way that corporations have to book the money in their pension plans. It used to be that they had to book it as a liability, that this is money that we owe to our pensioners in the future. And they changed it so that companies could book it as an asset instead, which means that, so say you got $1 billion company with $100 million worth of pension liabilities. When you book it as a liability, that means the company, if you sell the company, it's only worth $900 million. But if you book it as an asset, that means when you sell the company, it's $1.1 billion. And then the people who buy the company, they, again, changes made during the Reagan era, they can simply bankrupt the pension fund and say, no, you're not going to get any more money, or you're going to get pennies on the dollar. And this is being done to the coal miners, it's being done to steel workers, it's being done to auto workers, it's being done all over the airlines were big on this. Eastern Airlines was one of the first to do this back in the day. Actually, TWA, I think, was one of the very first to do it. Carl Icahn was running that show, and again, that was in the late 80s, and they screwed their flight attendants and their pilots by stealing their pension, as I recall, in one of these deals. So that's the big problem, Bill. It's not that people are living longer.
It's a big problem all over Europe, China, Japan. That's why they're demonstrating all over France, including the police are joining those demonstrations. Now, my plan is not voodoo math.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know that the Japanese are.
My plan will put any pension plan in any land.
Okay, so what's your plan, Bill?
Private.
Your plan is to privatize pensions, to privatize Social Security?
The 7.5% can be raised by those on pension in their pension plan.
So I don't understand what you're suggesting, Bill. What specifically is your solution?
Let me tell you. I have a video up, and they've been blocking me for 8 years, and they won't let me mention it on C-SPAN. But for Social Security, those on Social Security should be allowed to get a month's advance, 5%, to be prepaid for deductions in 10 months.
Why?
And if to help them stay out of the cause.
Why don't we just do what Bernie and Elizabeth Warren are proposing, which is eliminate the cap on Social Security so that Charles Koch is paying the same amount I am, and then expand Social Security benefits, increase Social Security benefits so that people get more money. I mean, it's like, and then let's put the cost of living adjustments, based on actual things that seniors buy, like medication, and housing, rather than iPads. I mean, I don't think that's rocket science either. Bill, thanks for the call. It sounds interesting, but I'm not a fan of privatizing Social Security. We'll be right back. Our 1 hour free podcast recaps our show, and it's available wherever fine podcasts are found. And we have the full 3 hour podcast available over at thomhartmann.com if you want to really support our program. We have a special video up over at thomhartmann.com for supporters of our program, and it's about how a letter that the IRS sent out to 3.9 million Americans saved 700 lives. And you're like, wait a minute, the IRS saved 700 lives? How did that happen? Well, it had to do with Obamacare, and it's a fascinating story. And it turns out that this analysis of this IRS mailing was actually the first time that the federal government has done a study that actually proved that people having access to health care produces fewer deaths. For every 1,648 people who got the letter, there was one fewer premature death. I'll explain the whole thing in the video. It's as I said, it's available over at thomhartmann.com for people who are regular supporters of our program, and it is really worth checking out. And it's a great ad, essentially, for our national health care system. Welcome back. Anything Goes Friday here on the Thom Hartmann Program, and Kimon in Dayton, Ohio. Hey, Kimon, what's up? Kimon? Listening on Sirius XM? Kimon's been on hold for a while. I'm going to put him on hold here so that Joyce can check it out and see what happened. Patrick in Seaside, California. Hey, Patrick, what's on your mind?
Hi, Tom. Let me get you off speaker.
Normally when people say that, I put them on hold. Let me give you a little tip. If you're listening on speakerphone, I'm holding a cell phone here in my hand. If you're listening on speakerphone, when you come on the air, just put your speakerphone right up against your mouth, and it'll sound like you're not on speakerphone. And I'll never know, and I won't cut you off or put you on hold. Anyhow, Patrick, are you still there, or did you vanish? Sounds like Patrick vanished. Okay. Jeff in Portland, Oregon. Hey, Jeff, what's on your mind?
Hey, good morning, Tom. Another jam-packed show, so thanks for taking my call.
You're welcome.
And it's not why I'm calling, but, it really should be on all our radars that, we have over 2,000 former Justice Department officials calling on Bill Barr to resign, along with 9 U.S. senators, including our 2 here in Oregon, Wyden and Merkley.
Yep.
And I don't know where the Washington Post and New York Times have been, but the Boston Globe last Friday, their editorial board called on him to resign. Mm-hmm. So, hopefully the Times and the Post will get with it too.
I'm with you.
And, by the way, Tom, did you know Barr was a little right-wing bully back in his junior high and high school days?
Yeah, the one of the fellows that Barr bullied brought this story
Jimmy Lohman.
Yeah, right. He brought this story to Mark Carlin, who's the publisher of BuzzFlash, BuzzFeed, BuzzFlash, BuzzFlash.com. And Mark sent me a note about it this morning, and I'm trying to get Sean to get Mark on the show to tell the story of his relationship to the guy who was actually bullied by Bill Barr when he was a kid. Yeah.
Yeah, his name's Jimmy Lohman, and he wrote it back in '91. Yeah.
Yep.
So anyway, Tom, the reason I'm calling, there's been a lot of talk lately about unity, specifically can Bernie unite the Democratic Party and then the country if elected? And I want to say, of course he can. And in my humble opinion, Tom, Medicare for All and the Green New Deal will figuratively and physically heal this country, just as FDR did with Social Security and the Green New Deal. I mean, and the New Deal, not the Green New Deal.
I'm with you.
And when it comes to messaging, the phrase "a just transition" has been used a lot by proponents of the Green New Deal, and I think it would behoove Bernie and proponents of Medicare for All to do the same. And by that I mean assuring these union members, many whom already know, but the ones that are on the fence, to assure them that when they start to get covered by Medicare for All, that their employer-negotiated insurance coverage is going to be compensated to them in terms of bonuses or other benefits, and that this will be required because, why should corporate America get to pocket these savings? There was a great piece on Wednesday's Common Dreams about how corporate America, even though they know they will benefit from this as far as not having to pay, they're still fighting it every step of the way. So what do you think, Tom?
Yeah, I completely agree. And I went off on this rant yesterday. I believe it was yesterday, maybe the day before. It was when I was in Seattle, about how Bernie is not George McGovern. I mean, that's now we're hearing this old trope, oh my God, he's going to be George McGovern. He's too liberal. And, George McGovern lost in 72 for reasons that had nothing to do with his being a liberal. It had to do with his vice presidential candidate had electroshock therapy, and McGovern was a terrible campaigner. He was a soft-spoken guy, and Nixon basically ate his lunch. And in fact, Nixon knocked what was his name out of the race, the senator from Maine. Ed Muskie. He knocked Ed Muskie out of the race in order to run against McGovern, because he knew that Ed Muskie could actually beat Nixon in 72. And Ed Muskie was arguably more progressive than McGovern was. I mean, they were both big supporters of expanding Medicare to cover everybody, et cetera, et cetera. So, it's a complete canard, and I'm seeing it popping up on progressive websites, and I think it's very unfortunate. This is not 1972. Bernie is not McGovern. I mentioned, by the way, before we hit the break, I was going to tell you about Mike Bloomberg and Pat Toomey. In the election in 2016, in Pennsylvania, Republican Pat Toomey won the Senate seat, that Pennsylvania Senate seat, with only 90,000 votes, or by only 90,000 votes. It was a very, very, very tight race. And what enabled Pat Toomey to win that race was a $12 million contribution that his super PAC got from Mike Bloomberg. And Pat Toomey, a Republican in the Senate, has voted with Trump 84% of the time. He voted to end Obamacare. He voted for Trump's tax bill. He voted for Brett Kavanaugh. He voted against having witnesses for the impeachment hearing. The only issue on which he has voted in ways that you and I might agree with is guns, which is apparently why Mike Bloomberg gave him all that money. But, another thing, we'll see if it pops up in the debates. But, another thing to be concerned about. Kathy in Cambridge, Ohio. Hey, Kathy, what's on your mind today?
Hello, Mr. Hartmann. Thank you for all that you do. Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
And then basically, years ago, I called and begged your listeners, who are far more educated and intelligent than I, to follow the money, follow the money, follow the money, please. Mm-hmm. It has been done. Unfortunately, the money is winning at the moment, trying to be the eternal optimist.
Yeah.
Greed kills. Everything that has been discussed today in your show, from biodiversity to the last young man's call, taking it even further, I'm to a point, after having called my senator myriads of time, having called Mr. Burr myriads of time, and in my innocence originally begging them for my favorite word, which is think, truth, honor, integrity, nonviolence, and knowledge. It became obvious that they were using none of the above.
Yeah.
And so I think it's time for us to use sound bites that will get our fellow Americans' attention more quickly. Greed kills, and the billionaires, in my opinion, are using their money to protect their own egos and its.
I agree. Kathy, I'm sorry we're out of time, but greed kills is great.
The Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
I love that. That should be made into a bumper sticker. Kathy, thank you for that. I'm sorry we hit the break there. This is one I can't control. We'll be back. So once again, we're finding that our president is a foreign asset. And you've heard my opinion of this before. I don't think it's so much that Donald Trump cut a deal with the government of Russia or anything like that. I think that for 20 years, he's been laundering money for Russian oligarchs and Turkish oligarchs and Armenian oligarchs and, probably South Korean oligarchs, places where he's got Trump Towers all over the world, Filipino oligarchs. I mean, this is the Panama Papers all over again. These guys, they stash their money in the United States typically by buying real estate, because the Trump Organization was one of the few companies, real estate companies, in the United States and certainly in New York that was willing to take cash payments. They take $40, $50 million in $100 bills, and this is what Trump has been doing all these years, and that's why he won't let his taxes out and all that kind of stuff. Now, you don't hear about that so much on the corporate media, although they are starting to acknowledge it with this thing about the intelligence briefing. But you have been hearing about that for 3 years now, right here on Free Speech TV. I mean, Free Speech TV is where the actual news gets laid out, whether it's Amy Goodman or me or Sonali or Stephanie Miller or David Pakman. I mean, there's just some great talent on Free Speech TV. And, when you make your contribution during a particular show, it not only goes to Free Speech TV, but a very small portion of that actually comes to the show, comes to us to help us deliver our show to Free Speech TV, to pay for our internet connection and to help pay for some of our video production here on this end. And it's all real important. It helps us, it helps and every other show on Free Speech TV, and it helps Free Speech TV. So this is sort of your vote, for the shows that you like. And it's really important that you call now, 877-378-8669, and make your contribution to Free Speech TV. Every little bit helps. The ongoing contributions, becoming a sustaining member during our show, is, super important, because that allows Free Speech TV to know in advance what kind of money they're going to have coming in, to budget, to plan for the future. And so please call now, 877-378-8669, so that we can keep talking about what's actually going on in the world, what's actually going on inside the Trump administration, what's actually going on inside the Democratic Party, for that matter. There's just a whole lot of stuff, a whole lot of stories. I know we put, Louise and I put this, and Sean and Nate, we put this show together every day, and we put a lot of work into it. And with Nigel and Sue and everybody else involved in this, and all of that work comes together as this program, and we really try to do it, try to put together a show so that you're fully informed, so that you can go into the day and say, okay, I really do know what the top news stories of the day are, and even the subtleties of them, the things like the economy, our conversations with Richard Wolff, and voting, our conversations with Greg Palast, and the work and research that I do, frankly, that in writing my books on the guns and on the Supreme Court and on voting, and then bringing all that information to this show. We love doing it. I enjoy doing it. And, and we want to continue doing it. We want to continue doing it here on Free Speech TV. And that's only going to happen if enough of you call now and make a contribution, 877-378-8669. With a $20 gift, there's a Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker. Or with a $20 gift, you can get it's sort of like a bumper sticker, the car magnet that says, "I'm voting, are you?" I'm sorry, that's the postcard pack. The car magnet, what does a car magnet look like here, Nate? It says, "I'm voting, are you?" It says, "I'm voting, are you?" Cool, thank you. And with a $50 gift, there's the Just Effing Vote canvas tote bag. This is great, right? And I heard yesterday from the folks at Free Speech TV that a lot of people love the tote bag. And, you can make a $50 gift and get the tote bag, and then you can say, oh, and by the way, also, take $5 a month, on my credit card forever, or $10 a month, or whatever it may be. With a $75 donation, you get the Tag Your It Thom Hartmann Program mug. And with a $240 contribution, you can participate in one of our virtual meet and greets where we all get together on Skype or Zoom or something like that, where, and just have a kind of private off-the-record conversation. So that's with $240. With a $300 gift, you get the Get Out the Vote pack. There's a set of Free Speech TV host postcards to send out to friends and family. Mine says, "I'm voting, are you?" A car magnet, the Get Out the Vote, the Just Effing Vote tote bag, and The Hidden History of the War on Voting, my new book. That's with a $300 gift. With a $360 gift, you get all 3 of my hidden history books: the hidden history of guns and the Second Amendment, the hidden history of the war on voting, and the hidden history of the Supreme Court and the betrayal of America. And with a $1,000 gift, come to Portland and hang out here in the peanut gallery, in the couch in our studio for the last hour of the show, and we'll take you to lunch afterwards, and you'll get to meet everybody. It'll be great. So please call now. Thank you so much. Hey, did you know that Hillary Clinton actually won Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, North Carolina, and Florida in the 2016 election? It's on page 92 of my new book, The Hidden History of the War on Voting. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. You know, the movie Parasite is actually about income inequality, or wealth inequality, rather, in South Korea. And it's a movie with subtitles, and we'll get to that part in just a moment. But a great piece in the Washington Post by Christopher Ingraham. He says it's a story of a society where the working class has no hope of attaining a better life and instead squabble among themselves for the literal scraps of prosperity cast off by the wealthy as the wealthy move serenely through their charmed lives. So that's the plot device, essentially, of this movie Parasite. And he notes that in South Korea, the top 1% of South Koreans own a quarter, 25% of the nation's wealth, while the bottom half of the population owns just 2% of the nation's wealth. And that sounds pretty bad, right? In other words, if South Korea were only 100 people and its wealth was a pie with 100 slices, the richest person would get 25 slices of that pie all to himself, while the poorest 50 people would have to split 2 slices of pie among them. But in the United States, now back in the 1980s, our inequality was roughly like that. The bottom 50% had about 3% of the nation's wealth. So it would have been, you know, the top 1% owns a quarter of the wealth, and the bottom 50% has 3 slices of pie. But today, 40 years after Reaganomics, after 40 years of Reaganomics, the richest American gets a whopping, now keep in mind, in Korea, the richest Korean, well, of the 100 people, the richest would get 39 slices of pie for himself, for just that one person. In South Korea, the richest person would get 25 slices of pie. In the United States, the richest American, the single richest American, would get a whopping 39 slices of pie, while the bottom 50 people would get nothing in the United States. In fact, they would owe pie to the richest person, to the richest 1%, that top 1%. And this is where we are at now. The top 1% of South Koreans earns about 12% of national income, while in the United States, the top 1% earns 20%, 1/5 of all our income. And the bottom 50% of Americans literally have none of our nation's wealth. In fact, they have a negative net worth. They're in debt. And then he adds in the Washington Post, as recently as the late 1980s, the bottom half of Americans could claim several percent of the country's wealth as their own. So Trump comes out in his one of his rallies the other day and just goes off on it. He's talking about this movie. And again, the movie has subtitles, right? It's in Korean. And he says, what the hell was that all about? We've got enough problems with South Korea on trade. On top of all that, they give him the best movie of the year, attacking the Academy Awards. And Neon, one of the people, I believe, in the movie, I'm not sure the whole story here, but Neon tweeted that little clip of Trump saying that and said, it's understandable that he would be critical. He can't read. It's a subtitled movie, right? Get it? Okay. Boom. Anyway, back to your calls here on Anything Goes Friday. Conrad in San Diego. Hey, Conrad, what's up? What's on your mind today?
Yeah, a couple of points real quick. I live in Southern California, and my California vote in the last primaries between Hillary and Bernie was stolen from me.
How so? How do you know?
I'm a bit of a romantic. I like to even walk to my voting station. So I never signed up for a mail-in ballot. Well, I got a mail-in ballot that year. Thought nothing of it. Of course, I'm disorganized, so I lost it. go to my polling station, and they can't let me vote except through a provisional ballot, which we know doesn't get counted, because I couldn't surrender my mail-in ballot.
Right.
Well,
right.
I just
this happens
heard,
to about 26% of California voters, according to an earlier caller. I can't say that authoritatively, but this was a widespread problem that appeared to happen in the 2016 primary, and nobody knows why.
Yeah, I'll tell you why. Because I was a Bernie guy, and a woman walked in at the same just behind me, and I forget what was on her T-shirt, but she was pretty obviously a Bernie guy too. She had to give a provisional ballot as well. Right. No one else was. It was a very Republican area. Pallas was on another show about 9 days ago, and he mentions that this is being done deliberately. It is a ploy that if you're a California voter, your vote is not safe. We've got to be. So if you could have him on before March 3rd, that'd be a really
well,
good
we talked
thing.
about Greg Pallas and I talked about this last week. Well, actually, we talked about it at an event that KPFK put on, so it wasn't on the air. But yeah, you're absolutely right. And when you show up, it'll say MIB or anyhow, it's a three-letter initial that stands for mail-in ballot, that you're a mail-in ballot voter. And if you don't bring that ballot with you to the polling place, if you didn't fill in the mail-in ballot and send it in, then you will be given a provisional ballot, which may or may not be counted. Actually, about a lot of the provisional ballots in the last California election actually were counted. But this just adds a whole level of complexity that is terrible, and something needs to be done about it. Conrad, thank you for the call. It's a good one. Stephen in San Francisco. Hey, Stephen, thanks for listening to 910 a.m. It was great doing the show from there last week. What's up?
Well, in real time right now, Tom, in Las Vegas, he's propping up his other hotel, that failing hotel
Trump?
out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they built a casino in that hotel, the floor, but he couldn't get his license. So now he's trolling the Democrats out there and running the bill up in that failing property. Again, he's doing it. Every day he does it.
Right. Yeah, and I understand even when he was in California, he insisted on taking Air Force One back to Las Vegas every night so that he could stay in his hotel, so that his entire security detail and all of his people would have to stay in his hotel, all at top price and all paid for by your and my tax dollars. It's disgusting, yeah.
Can I take exception for him in that speech saying that San Francisco is a slum? Well, he should know slums. Him and his father ran slums in Queens, subsidized by the government, and then put fees on the applications and got caught. I mean, if he wants to say this is a slum, why doesn't he come out here and say it to our face instead of saying it out there in Bakersfield? This guy is the biggest coward in America.
Yeah, well, bullies typically are cowards, and so I'm completely with you, Stephen. Amen. Thank you for the call, and thanks for listening to 910 a.m. Anthony in Los Angeles. Hey, Anthony, what's up?
Hey, Tom, how's it going?
Good.
So I lived in Los Angeles pretty much my whole life. A couple years ago, I took a break, explored the country. I ended up in Kansas in 2018, where we helped Laura Kelly, took out Chris Kobach. Mm-hmm. And we've got to win the Electoral College. That's all it comes down to. We've got the numbers, but look, the EC isn't going away. So what we need to do is identify a couple of these toss-up states with really close polls. Especially helps if there's a close Senate race. I'm looking at Arizona. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to move there. Now, it's up to everybody. You have to follow the law. But what you can do is you can move there a couple months before the election, sleep on a couch if you need to, rent a room. I don't care. You don't have to stay there your whole life, but you got to vote there. So identify these states. And that's what we got to do. We've got to make sacrifices.
You've got to, if you're going to do that, you've got to move to a state early enough to be able to legally register to vote, and just doing this to try to swing elections. There's not enough people who would have the ability to do that, who would have the economic freedom to do that, and B, it's a little sketchy, Anthony. I get what you're doing, and I wish you well, but I can't recommend that people do that. I would rather see people, phone banking, calling into red states, talking to people who are, stuck in red states, who are watching Fox News, who are badly informed, malinformed, misinformed, underinformed, and bring them up to speed, or go visit those states and engage and get out the vote drives. I mean, rather than moving to Arizona, why don't you go to Arizona for a couple of months and if you have the economic freedom to do that, and be one of the people who drives people to the polls on voting day, be one of the people who makes sure that people are registered to vote, be that shoe leather on the ground. Jesse in Seattle. Hey, Jesse, thanks for listening to KBCS. What's up?
Hello. Hey, Tom. Great to hear your voice.
Thank you.
Thanks. Two information recommendations for you and the listeners. First is the iNaturalist phone app. And second, of course, the Federal Election Commission FEC website. So for the iNaturalist phone app, this is for our mutual admiration of biodiversity. The app allows you to see what species of plant, animal, and insects are in your geographical area, and allows you to photograph and upload plants, animals, and insects, and have the app identify them, and then the naturalist and scientist community confirms the species that you identified or that the phone app identified. Yeah, so I really enjoy using it. I recommend anybody out there that wants to know what plants and animals are in their area to utilize that. And then the FEC website, all the campaign
Federal Election
contribution
Commission.
data.
Right.
Yeah, Federal Election Commission. All campaign contribution data is public. You just have to know how to search and sift through the data. And even though the FEC lacks
there is a group, Jesse, that has already searched, has already sorted and searched that data, and that's over at the website opensecrets.org. And you can select any member of Congress, and you can see who gave them and how much and when and where and all the details. And so they're taking that data from the FEC website and putting it in a form that's a little more accessible. But you're right, it's also on the FEC website. So Jesse, I got to run, but thanks for the call. Good stuff, and I'll check out the app. Assuming you're not just trying to promote an app that you, whatever. It sounds like a good thing. We'll be back. It's 45 minutes past the hour here on the Thom Hartmann Program. Talk media for the sane among us.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Interesting. Sean says iNaturalist even has a website, so check it out. We'll be right back. And welcome back. Joy in North Fork Valley, Colorado, watching on YouTube. Hey, Joy, what's up?
Hi. Actually, I'm on Free Speech TV.
Oh, all the better. Cool. What's up?
Yeah, I'm Elijah. I love Free Speech TV.
Yeah, me too.
And support it all the time. And thank you. So I'll be really fast, but a few things. That words matter. He was never elected. He was selected by a very undemocratic, slavery-based system.
Yes.
And and that we need to add more seats to the Supreme Court. And it is both parties. Why did they not impeach him for emoluments? Why didn't they subpoena the whole Mueller report? The FBI knew that the Russians were, involved years ago.
They did subpoena the stuff from the Mueller report, and Bill Barr refused to turn it over.
Yes, and so how in the world can we impeach Barr? And also, for president and such, I think if we really put it out there, Bernie, Stacey Abrams for vice president, Elizabeth Warren for Treasury, and Adam Smith for Attorney General. Those ideas into people's heads and see, because some people say, oh, Bernie, he's not electable. Of course he's electable. He's the most electable person. He's the one that gets everybody. Right. And anyway, okay, I get.
Yeah, I'm with you, Joy. I'm with you. Thank you. Thanks for the call, and thanks for your passion. Patrick in Seaside, California. Hey, Patrick, what's up? What's on your mind?
Hey, I got a bunch of things I want to go real quick. In 4 years ago, Dick Van Dyke was on Chris Matthews and said Bernie Sanders is really an old school New Deal Democrat, FDR Democrat.
Which is true.
That which I think, maybe Bernie should pivot away from Democratic Socialists just because a lot of people are hammering him on that. I think we know that he's said enough already about Bernie Bros, which I think are Russian or Republican bots anyway. Maybe he should just do a 2-minute, okay, I disown you.
He did that during the debate.
I know, but I keep hammering him. And maybe if he just gives a 2-minute speech and says, look,
I don't think he needs to give it any more energy.
Well, anyway, the other thing I wanted to say was last week, back-to-back appearances with you and Greg Palast, you were on Rising Up with Sonali, and Greg said that 3 million voters, the Democrats do the same thing the Republicans do, only they don't have cross-check. Maybe they utilize it. That 3 million voters were purged and had to do provisional ballots, and of those 3 million, 2 million were purged. Also, I remember 4 years ago on Lee Camp, he said that leading up to the Democratic National Convention, Bernie kept flipping precinct after precinct and county after county and overcame a 15-point deficit to be 13 points down, to be 2 points ahead, and actually unofficially win California. And that was never acknowledged. Do you put any credence in that?
Well, I believe that was based on the argument that a lot of the Bernie supporters somehow got listed as mail-in ballot voters and didn't mail in their ballots, and when they showed up at the polls, they were given provisional ballots, which were not counted. I believe that's the basis of that theory. That California was basically rigged prior to the 2016 primary. I can't speak to that. I don't have direct knowledge of it. Greg Palast would be good to talk about that. But as much as possible, I'd like to leave the 2016 Hillary-Bernie wars behind, frankly.
One last thing. I don't want to do the circular firing squad, but I would like to see it, just me personally, I'd like to see it get down to Sanders and Warren, because I think that Buttigieg and Klobuchar and Biden are weak candidates, and they're inauthentic. And the two authentic candidates, the best, most popular, and best for the country candidates are Warren and Sanders.
I'm with you. Patrick, thank you for the call. Not that I wouldn't enthusiastically vote for President Klobuchar or Biden or whatever, but, Bernie and Liz Warren, they're the real deal. Our 1-hour free podcast recaps our show, and it's available wherever fine podcasts are found. And we have the full 3-hour podcast available over at thomhartmann.com if you want to really support our program. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Ivan in Bartlett, Illinois. Hey, Ivan, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom. Thank you. Please give me about 15 seconds.
Okay.
Would making health care for all a human right promote the general welfare?
Yes, of course. And the general welfare is in the preamble of the Constitution, one of the reasons why it was created, yes.
Would providing education for all our children at no cost help secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity?
Yep.
Would guaranteeing a living wage establish justice and ensure domestic tranquility?
Oh, yeah. You're going right through the preamble here, aren't you?
And would these things help form a more perfect union?
Yes, absolutely.
If the answer is yes, then all the founders who signed the Constitution and all the 13 colonies that ratified the Constitution were, like Bernie, democratic socialists.
Well, I keep pointing out that the first president of the United States, and I'll ask people this on the air, and they're like, well, the first president of the United States to sign legislation that provided for housing, health care, and food for poor people, for indigent people. The first president of the United States to do that. And I'll say, who was it? And people will go, well, was it Franklin Roosevelt? No, it was George Washington. George Washington signed legislation to create a poorhouse in Washington, D.C., federal legislation, because D.C. is the federal city. And so, if you want to say that this stuff is socialist, take it up with George Washington. Ivan, thank you for the call. Linda in Palo Cedro, California, listening on KFOI. Hey, Linda, what's up?
Hi, Thom Hartmann. Yeah, and that's Palo Cedro, California, outside of Redding. I listen to you on KFOI, and thank you so much for your show. I wanted to talk about the Delta Tunnel that's being proposed in California, and it has a lot to do with David Bernhardt, who's now Department of Interior head, and Westland Water District. And it's a huge water grab in California. It uses tremendous amounts of subsidized farming. It's welfare for farming. And this was originally supposed to be for farm subsidies were originally to encourage independent farms for small family farms. And they threw those laws out in 1982, which reformed it from originally 160,000-acre farm, or 160-acre farm to 960-acre farm, and they get huge subsidies. They don't have to live on the land, but it's creating this huge water grab in California, and that's what the Delta Tunnel's about. So Bernhardt was the one that represented Westland Water District, and they're down in the Fresno Basin.
And he's now in the Trump Interior Department. Is that the deal?
You bet. And Trump said this week he just got through saying, we want California to fix their water problem. Well, it was a problem that occurred because Westland was taking a water grab in SoCal. Right. And so what ended up happening is the taxpayers under $1978 paid $770 million to build the San Luis Reservoir so that they could farm farmland around the Fresno Basin. They farmed land that should have never, ever been farmed. It created this huge selenium runoff, which created toxicity. So now that Westlands, to fast forward this, now Westlands is asking for us to fix that on the taxpayer dollar. They're already subsidized by taxpayer dollars, and this is a huge water grab.
Yeah, I get it, Linda. I get it. So thanks for sensitizing us to it, and this is crazy stuff. Thank you for that. I'll have to dig a little deeper into it, but I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Bruce in Clinton, Iowa. Hey, Bruce, what's on your mind?
Hi, Tom. Hey, I realize an Iowan having concerns about the accuracy of the Nevada caucuses is probably the last thing anyone wants to hear.
You have unique authority to speak, Bruce, being from Iowa.
Well, here's my concern. It's the procedure of having people already voting before they have the debate. Because I think you're going to have skewed results. I think the results that came in prior to the debate are going to be very different, and afterwards I think Senator Warren in particular is going to get a bump that's going to be much higher than before, and it just seems to me that procedure is wrong.
Well, perhaps. On the other hand, you've got to provide for people who can't take the day off and go caucus. And, that means early voting. So, sadly, frankly, Elizabeth Warren in previous, this is the 9th debate. She's been in 9 debates now. In the previous debates, she had been the one who was trying to play peacemaker. And even in this one, she defended Amy Klobuchar when Pete Buttigieg tried to attack her. She'd been trying to play peacemaker. And this time she took the gloves off, and we saw the Elizabeth Warren that had those Wall Street guys when she was grilling them before the Senate, quaking in their boots. And I was so glad to see that Elizabeth Warren show up. She really knows how to take people down. And if she is the nominee, or Bernie is the nominee, either way, and Bernie was on fire too in the debate, either one of them will reduce Trump to cinders. And, and I'm very concerned that, Bloomberg demonstrated that he couldn't do that. And, obviously Tom Steyer is kind of out of the race, and some of the other candidates. And I just, if you want the most electable candidates, those are the two that not only have the passion themselves, but have passionate followers. And people say, oh my God, Bernie bros. What, you mean somebody, a candidate who engenders passion, often misplaced passion, but nonetheless passion in their voters, is not the person that you want, is not the person who's going to win elections? Come on, give me a break. Anyhow, thanks so much for being with us today. The show is at an end today. We will be back Monday, same time, same place. I'll be back here in Portland. Back from Minneapolis. I'm going there tomorrow morning, in fact, up at 5 a.m. to head out. And so in the meantime, wish me well on the trip. And in the meantime, don't forget, democracy is not a spectator sport. It does require you, which means please get out there, get active, tag You're It, and tell your friends and neighbors and relatives how to find good progressive media. Thank you.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.